So, topic one. Facial recognition is controversial technology. In Detroit, a young black girl was incorrectly kicked out of a skating rink after their facial recognition system misidentified her. It matched her with the face of another girl who had been kicked out of the rink due to a public brawl. Facial recognition software has more difficulty identifying female faces and people of darker skin tones. This leads to some to claim racial bias is built into the system. Do the benefits of facial recognition software outweigh the risk? Or, by instituting this technology, are we creating another tool of oppression? So, yeah, we're going to start with one introductions by everyone, and then we'll jump into it. So, Joe Lewis, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll lay some groundwork for this, right? So, like, algorithms, like facial recognition algorithms, are really accurate around 90%. However, once you start compounding identities, which, again, like, if we had this conversation has to be centered around intersectionality, in my opinion, things start to get complicated, right? So we can still say, on one hand, that 90% of facial recognition software is accurate, but at the same time, understand that the demographic that has the lowest accuracy percentage on average are young Black women. Now, that's a lot, right? And we will hopefully we can stay on topic with that, but and probably Connor's going to do some stuff in terms of facial recognition as regards with law enforcement. Generally, where I stand on this is that certain biases concern me. Black faces scoring negative emotional characteristics and the difficulty of recognizing Black faces in general, and then compound that with the recognition of female faces in general, and then compounding that with the recognition of Black female faces in general. Then on top of that, we'll probably get to it maybe a little bit later, but the idea of Black faces scoring angrier when there's different ambiguity in facial expression that's expressed in a lot of other studies. But there's a lot of ground to cover on this topic. Let's hopefully just try to stay on it, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Socrates.
Yeah. So so there's two things that I want to bring into this because I think there's a lot here that people are probably going to bring up. The two things that I'm not sure if they'll be brought up from there's a concept that we look at in medicine, which is not just the likelihood of one result or another occurring, but the effects of that. So let's say some treatment is successful 97% of the time. If there's bad side effects that other 3% of the time, if those side effects are very, very bad, we need to be concerned even if they occur rarely. So with a facial recognition, even if it's accurate most of the time, if it's being applied often and the effects can be, very harmful. In this case, we saw, they didn't like try to call her mom. They didn't, they're just like threw out on the street. That's pretty bad. And I can imagine a lot of circumstances, looking for a criminal, doing lots of things, excluding people from different spaces online or in real life, whatever. That's not good. There's another just piece of this. I don't know, to some people it might seem kind of pie in the sky, but we do still have the Patriot Act. We've got some major cables that have been leaked that were the US and Google as well, kind of the same thing at this point when it comes to spying, are pretty much spying on everybody all of the time. Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, is still active. That means that anybody who can be tied to the Taliban, acts of terrorism, or quote unquote associated forces can be removed from society, put in jail without trial, without charges being levied. So I think about the larger society I want to live in. It's great that you can look at your phone and it just opens right up. You don't have to do this. It's so convenient. It's nice. But when we look at maybe the potential downsides of this technology becoming ubiquitous and common and accepted, I see some real dangers. I'm sorry if I went way over time.
Yeah, you did. It's no problem, though. We love you. All right, let's go, Connor.
Yeah, no, I think there's some good points that were brought up, but in Socrates kind of took it exactly where I wanted to go, which is basically taking this from a macroscopic lens. I understand that because I'm a law enforcement officer, or previously a law enforcement officer, people might assume that I would be like, "Hey, let's go get the bad guys." No, that is not my instinct at all. I am a constitutional conservative. I do believe in the concept of privacy. I do believe in the Fourth Amendment. So basically, I don't think that you should be subject to this kind of like warrantless tracking at all times. And also, typically, when I think about tools of the state or tools of the security apparatus, I always contextualize it in what if this was in the hands of the worst person imaginable. That's how I contextualize almost any of my conceptions of power. And especially when it comes to facial recognition software, we basically saw this applied in Hong Kong, and it destroyed the Hong Kong protests. They had to wear masks, they had to wear hats, they had to carry umbrellas, they had to hit cameras with lasers, and even then, the leaders were basically taken, arrested, broken up, and as a result, you basically crushed a pro-democratic movement that started out peaceful and then obviously escalated from there. So no, I think facial recognition can have niche applications, but it obviously needs to be backed up with other tools. And I think in general, it's probably nefarious and needs to be very heavily guarded against.
Okay. Honor box.
Okay, I think I'm going to start this with just like a little story from merry old United Kingdom land. It was in early 1800s when a group called the Luddites went around. They were basically named after a guy called Ned Ludd, a kind of village idiot who got whipped for idleness and then responded by smashing up two knitting frames. So the idea was that new machines were being introduced to factories. Problem was that meant the bosses realized they could get a lot more money out of their workers, so they forced them to work even harder and then through the night. So the working day for the people actually got worse because industry got more productive. So the response was to smash up the machines. What people don't know about the Luddites, and that's why, well, Luddites usually used as a kind of like slur against technophobic people and all that. So, but what people don't know about the Luddites is they eventually came to a kind of different angle where they realized that, wait, these machines are actually very productive. It's the power relations and the distribution that's the problem. So they kind of moved to more of an issue around pay ratios or discretion at work. And then a bunch of them were executed by the state, and then they evaporated. So the thing with this, like people calling like facial recognition like a tool for oppression, I think that's maybe like maybe thinking about the wrong questions. Like there's been benefits shown to it. I think in India, it allowed them to identify 3,000 missing children in the space of 4 days, which was faster than they'd ever done it before. It helps people identify photographs if they've got visual impairments, et cetera, et cetera. There's probably a lot of uses you could find for it. But the problem is marginalized groups tend to get left out of conversations like this, and their needs are not always addressed. It's the same idea with medicine. You could say that, like, I think, is it dermatitis that's much harder to notice on people with dark skin than it is to people with white skin? To which some people might say, well, of course it is. They've got darker skin. What can you do about that? Mm-hmm. But no, that's actually a call to further the development of training in that, so that it's just as easy, like, so that you're just as likely to find it on someone with black skin as you are with white skin. Same with facial recognition. The technology needs a lot more work done to it, clearly, so that you don't have this massive disparity. I think one statistic from IBM and Microsoft was that 35% of a sample of dark-skinned women were misidentified compared to 1% of light-skinned men, which is huge. Like, there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the technology, but that is necessary work to actually reap some of the benefits from this as well.
Okay, thank you. Rob.
Yeah, a good point. There are certainly benefits to this. There's also problems. So I agree with Socrates and counterpoints. The problems I'm very much concerned with are our privacy rights. And we could talk about that. However, let me play devil's advocate. It's sort of non-unique. I don't know how we get away from this. The technology's out there. We already have people putting pictures of themselves online in places like that. So if you have facial recognition software that's just taking social pictures from public platforms and scanning through that, I don't understand how we could prevent a private business from doing that. It might be a different question if we talk about like a state actor, like police or something like that. But that's not what this story is. This story was a skating rink, I believe, and I don't see how you could say they're not allowed to buy that software. And additionally, the largest study that was done on this was in 2019 from the National Institute of Science and Technology, and it said that it looked like there was a problem with false positives, particularly with Black women compared to other groups. But the problem with the study is that it shows the lower grade facial recognition softwares are the ones that had all the false positives. When you get to the top grade ones, the ones that cost more and that have been tested more, the difference between false positives between Black females and white males was 0.002%, which is statistically almost nothing. Now, that's not to say that there aren't other problems with things like privacy, but it could end up actually being used to lessen racial profiling, right? Because what you could see is if cops would use this and this technology becomes very effective, what could happen is you wouldn't have to pull people over based on just a description. A Black gentleman wearing a hoodie assaulted me, and so they're pulling over every Black gentleman wearing a hoodie. Whereas if you have a camera that shows that, then maybe they would rely on the facial technology, which would have a far less false positive rate. Additionally, you can see that this stuff happens with human error. I myself have been kicked out of a bar because I look like my brother, and the bouncer thought that I was my brother, who is a bad drunk. I happen to be a fantastic drunk, but I was kicked out of the bar because I look like him. So this sort of stuff's kind of already here to stay. I do have privacy concerns about it. I don't know how you can keep it out of the hands of private businesses. There certainly are positives with it, but yeah, it's something we're going to have to deal with because it's here to stay.
That's an interesting story about your brother. Do you guys
tell you that.
Do you look like, are you like in terms of like twins or something, or?
No, I'm bigger than him, but we had similar facial hair, and
Okay.
just to look at us at a glance, we would look very similar.
All right, fair enough. Mixed Vivian Wolf.
God, it really sucks going at the end of one of these things because, like, everybody's already said like 90% of what you want to say. I agree with Box that it's not necessarily the technology that's the problem, it's how it's used, it's the power relations and so on. I agree with Rob. I don't know how you stop private businesses doing this kind of shit, but then I don't know how you stop private businesses doing a whole load of fucking shit, which is why private businesses shouldn't be a fucking thing. I really, really dislike the idea of it being in state hands, the state being able to like monitor people. But I love the idea of the state being able to find missing children, right? I think that's pretty fucking important. But it won't just be used for that. So I think we have to be really, really careful with the legislation and what it can actually officially be used for. Yeah.
Like the philosophy, or Lewis, excuse me.
Yeah, so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Everyone said everything. So yeah, I do agree. Obviously, with everyone who said that, obviously there are surveillance implications. That it can be abused, and obviously Box obviously brought up as well. The technology needs to get improved, and you started off really well there, Box, and I thought I was agreeing with you. You were bringing up the Luddites and how people were facing political issues because of a technology, and then you said, oh, but it's okay because like they can improve the technology, and you sort of forgot the fact that they did actually all get executed. The ideology went out. This is the issue. I can see the potential racial implications, like shadow banning minorities, perhaps, causing like a form of segregation, increased engagement with law enforcement just because an individual is reported to have a certain percentage similarity with another individual. And obviously the Black community have a real issue with that already. There's already too much engagement with law enforcement. And then even feelings of discipline, feeling profiled, and so feeling that you have to avoid primarily like areas that would be primarily like white, or let's say less minority friendly, because you feel that you're going to be lumped into a category. But I don't think that it's racist. I think that this is inefficient, and I think that that is the real concern. I think that moving it to become more efficient is only going to make the problem worse. The real problem is the knowledge economy and the selling and monitoring of information on a mass surveillance for corporate and political means is devastating. We are looking at essentially we're looking at the possibility of the largest means of surveillance the world has ever seen being corporately available. We could see political espionage, corporate espionage. I mean, could we imagine if, let's say, Malcolm X or Martin Luther King had have been identifiable in a crowd through facial recognition software, and so could be followed everywhere they went. If they were trying to create some sort of civil disobedience, being a minority in this scenario who is trying to overcome an issue, but not having facial recognition technology capable of identifying you would probably be an advantage, not a disadvantage. The UK is already facing right now issues with what we are calling the mafia state, where government officials are being tracked, monitored, and blackmailed by corporations. And the Metropolitan Police are actually involved in this as well. The risks are absolutely endless. Racial profiling is absolutely a risk. But to be entirely honest with you, I think it is something that will be pushed out by much larger interests, which have to do with the efficiency of the technology and a growing knowledge economy.
And last but not least, Kat.
Oh, why, hello there. Yeah, so I don't think there's any problem with facial recognition inherently. It's more just like a data and sample issue. The reason why it's biased is because the people that are putting the data in have added biased data. There's nothing inherently good, bad, or neutral about this type of technology. All it needs to do is just be adapted so that it can have additional faces added in, and thus it wouldn't be having kind of a sample issue. So they just kind of say, oh, we only have 5 black faces and you're something in between the 5. Okay, you must be one of these 5. It's just a sample issue. Now, I think the second question, well, I guess the main question that you asked is a bit different than that, because it's more is this a system of oppression? Well, it can be a system of oppression regardless if it has bad sample data or not. It can be used in a racial type of oppression, but if we add additional data into it and are able to further tweak it to make it accurate, it could still be a form of oppression. I think it definitely has the capacity to be, especially with what everybody else has said so far, with it being able to be used for squashing disobedience. It could be used for just companies saying, I don't want you within the establishment. I think having facial recognition being more readily available across society is not a good thing, as we can see within China. They use the facial recognition to make sure Uyghurs aren't leaving their home, and that's not a very great way for this type of technology to be implemented. But it's all about what are the users doing. It could be used for really great things. So I think it's inherently neutral, and it's people that make it fucky.
Okay, all right, open to the panel.
I mean, I'm with it. I don't want facial recognition software used in anything, period. Especially if I were to pick a special groups, the government. In this particular, since even though we have a collaboration of individuals, especially the United States government. But I don't know if anyone generally disagrees with that idea.
Well, I think obviously we've got to take into consideration the positive implications of its use as well. And I think that if we're this is the fear. Every single tool that we can kind of point out, and I think Lorna was trying to make this point. You can have a tool which has an incredible amount of usefulness, but overall can be abused. And I think that this is 100% the case, especially with this technology. It's very useful. It's just unfortunately an incredibly useful tool is also a very dangerous weapon in this sense.
Well, that's the issue too, right? Because this system isn't in a vacuum. I don't think anybody believes that facial recognition software exists in a vacuum, but it's going to be collaborating with compounding societal structures. So facial recognition is going to collaborate with economics. Facial recognition is going to collaborate with social structures. Facial recognition is going to collaborate with political structures. The NYPD keeps a date. Even Rob pointed out a study, which is great because I read that exact same study, and it laid out a very troublesome fact that facial recognition software is used for mugshots. Guess who is overrepresented in gang affiliation to mugshots? Black people. So you have a database where over 90% of the mugshots are catered to Black and Latinx folks, but at the same time, there's no discretion about how you end up in that database in the first place. That just leads to poor outcomes. And then it's you're not only tackling the problems that exist within facial recognition software, you're going to also at the same time tackle the problems when it comes to mugshots and existing photos that already exist in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I think the bar for when facial recognition, because kind of what people have said is well it's here and we're not the people who are capable of like mitigating its use. I think the way that we need to mitigate its use is it has to be a part of the warrants process, particularly for domestic law enforcement and probably even for counterterrorism, international counterterrorism. Because basically,
ask a clarifying question with that statement, because that's a really cop take.
yeah, no, 100%. Go ahead.
So the question, I guess, how can I word this thought? Do you think facial recognition software should be used as an investigative lead?
No. Okay. So let me clarify. So I think we have to raise the bar for crimes in order for basically facial recognition technology to be used. As an example, when I say we, Jesus Christ, can't forget it. But when law enforcement officers subpoena cell phone records and use data, the subpoenas are basically only honorable if it's for a missing persons or a homicide case. Like that's literally like cell phone companies have come out and said like we protect the privacy of our users. It has to be a certain bar of seriousness in order for us to turn over geographic location data to law enforcement in real time. And I think that is basically the same bar that we have to have for facial recognition, because if you have every single time that a person gets drunk and walks down the street and pisses down an alley, they get a $300 ticket in the mail, then basically we're no longer free. We're captive to our own state, and every single crime can be punished because all they have to do is put up cameras everywhere, and we ultimately all just become hostages within our own country. But if we still had point, and then I'll relinquish, I know other people want to talk, but if we had the ability to do this, but then we only applied it in niche cases, basically human trafficking was one of the good examples that people brought up. I think counterterrorism is a good example, but we have to get nitpicky about definitions, considering Antifa and the Proud Boys are getting close to being put on the domestic terrorism list. And then I'm trying to think of what else, but basically like homicides. I think those could reach the bar where facial recognition is appropriate.
Well, yeah, but we also got to remember that, like, and this will be the last thing for me as well, that we currently don't have the very categorization that we're talking about domestic groups, right? This is why I mentioned in other panels where the infrastructure that they will probably adopt, which is again the same infrastructure that I think you have to go after white supremacist groups in the United States, is the gang infrastructure. I think if the federal government wants to do one last hurrah on some shit that brutalized black people, just fucking use that shit. Focus on any white supremacist group that you think probably exists. Do that for everyone you want, and then abolish that program.
You know that shit's gonna get inverted onto you, though. Like, you know it.
It was inverted. It was inverted on years, and it's gonna go away. We're just gonna have like one brief, quick war on white supremacy, and then it's gonna go away. Gonna dismantle those programs. It's fine.
Fast and Furious, but for the Klan.
Like the one in Afghanistan. It's like the Patriot Act.
Let's
it's gonna
check
go away.
our Robin DiAngelo. How do we define white supremacy? Oh, it's everything. Just like we had former CIA Director Brennan talk about white supremacists.
Can I clarify something to maybe just like stop Rob Point for getting really fucking south and derailing a panel? Like, we have information about every known, as many as are documented, white nationalist, white supremacist groups already on file. So if there's something you disagree with, we have to go point for point as to what organization you feel doesn't belong on that list, and then why do you feel that organization doesn't belong on that list? Because if
I get a chance here, when you start off saying, I have a lot of questions about how this sort of program could be abused and go after people, but as long as they go after the groups that I dislike, I'll be okay. What if I was to say, well, as long as they're only
black people, Rob.
Please. As long as they're going after MS-13 and they're going after the Bloods and the Crips and all these gangs, then I'm okay with it. Once they eliminate all those gangs, then they could end these programs. The question is, if you think there are dubious things in doing this, then we shouldn't say, well, we only go after one sort of supremacist or gang, but we allow the other ones to go blank.
These are counterpoints. I gotta push back on that, man.
To be fair,
discuss what Counterpoints was saying there. I'll just keep talking. That's fine. So to discuss what he was saying. The problem is that the cat's already sort of out of the bag. So again, we could do reverse image searches right now. Like you could see an image, do a reverse image search online. In a sense, that's a sort of facial recognition software. So even if we would say we don't want law enforcement, well, it's not the same level. I agree, but there's going to be even more false positives with that. So the problem is this technology is becoming more and more readily available, and in the next 10 years, it'll be something that you'll probably be able, as a person, to buy a software where you'll be able to crudely do this. And so I don't know how you keep it out of the hands of private individuals. If this data, of course, you would expect mugshots because they're publicly available to be part of this, but you also see things like people's Instagrams, Facebook photos that they put up on all sorts of social media. Those are all going to be public domain kind of and be included in these sort of programs. And even if we say, well, we'll keep it out of the hands of law enforcement, which I agree with the people saying that this is very problematic, but counterpoints, the world you're kind of talking about there's a separate problem, and that's the surveillance state, even without facial recognition. We already have cameras all over the place, particularly for my friends in the UK. The cameras are crazy in the UK on the major cities.
Stupidly camera.
Yeah,
and
so
I have a little bit of a rebuttal, just really quickly. So I understand that. I don't think you keep it out of the bag for the private system, but in America, thankfully, a lot of people are litigious. I think that what you could do is, if you are the subject of a detention or arrest or trespassing or something like that, based off of a false positive, and you're manhandled or brutalized or trespassed, and it was a false positive, and nobody caught or asked you for your ID. In order to confirm your identity, then they should be open to civil suit.
But shouldn't you also?
That might be true, but real quick,
if I may, so let's go to Lewis. But I just want to quickly say, but even if you are guilty, should you be manhandled or brutalized?
That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
It's the
if you refuse to leave, yeah, sure.
But listen, like if I go into a store and they choose to not allow me in there for whatever reason, because they think I look like someone who did something bad, or I didn't pay my tab last time, or whatever, they have the right to kick me out. Now, if it's being done for racial reasons, clearly we don't allow that. But if they say, we think you look like someone who tore this place up last time, I got kicked in. I didn't know this because I'm a country bumpkin. I went to New Orleans with a band. We were wearing white t-shirts. We got kicked out because white t-shirts in New Orleans were one of the gangs there wear them. We didn't do anything wrong. We clearly didn't look like the local gang, and yet they were like, we just and so like, yeah, there's a problem. If I would have been manhandled on my way out, perhaps then I have a lawsuit. But they have every right to say, we want you out of here. And I don't see how we could differentiate that with facial recognition.
Let's go to Lewis.
Yeah, so I think that the main concern that I have is actually more far-reaching than perhaps direct action from the police force, which I think can be regulated, as Counterpoint said, with perhaps legislation, which I think is great. Like, I'm all about the law, to be entirely honest with you. But I think it's private individuals and also institutional bias that really concerns me. Like, we could live in a panopticon, where individuals can constantly monitor each other's actions, in order to discipline each other into certain states of behavior. The fear of walking down the street because you think that your gait can be monitored, your face can be tracked. It'll prevent people from taking certain actions, and certainly when a state becomes more or less advantageous towards a certain political group. Now, Joe, you brought up, well, what if we used it against white supremacists? But I think that ideology is in and of itself the scary thought that I have. Don't get me wrong, God forbid I want the white supremacists to be gone. But as soon as people use this as a political tool, as a form of, okay, now we're going to use this to track, monitor, and, destroy a certain group from which I think or I wish to be condemned, then it becomes a weapon. And as soon as it's weaponized, it's going to crush a great deal of individuals who would be even associated with not just that behavior, but with other behaviors that they even may hear or believe are associated with facial recognition technology.
And it's,
sure. Can I ask
Joe, just real quick?
Sure, man.
So, because I think you'll want to respond to this as well. It's interesting that this entire conversation started with like compromat, because basically when we're talking about the LGBTQ community or whatever, not everybody is out. Not everybody wants to be out. And if you were talking about private facial recognition software, you could basically, hey, go outside a popular club, go outside a popular, LGBTQ club, and then basically find blackmail on people, on peers, on competitors, on anybody, basically. And you can say with 99% certainty, this is you going into this bathhouse or something.
And having a good time.
Right now. Sorry.
So let's go to Joe and then Lauren.
Yeah, I was being a little bit hyperbolic there when I said the comment about using white supremacists on gangs, because I knew certain individuals would get a rile out of that. But it does still, if I were to sort of double down a little bit there, right? We're currently dealing with the situation in Loudoun County around this whole thing about critical race theory and gender affirmation. And it's very interesting that the loyal white knights decided during this discourse to make themselves known and present in Loudoun County, in Fairfax and Prince William County in Virginia. And then on top of that, they've been on record to be staging different rallies and different things and being very overt in their rhetoric that they don't want blacks voting in the elections in these counties. And they want to prop up Glenn Youngkin. It's within their rhetoric, and you can look it up if you want to, if you have a dark web account, I guess. But my concern here is that this is a known hate group that's known to be skirting around crimes, which is known now to be trying to infiltrate the political discourse. And while I do think that there's a level of freedom of expression that should be preserved here, when you have groups in the United States that have had a past history and current history of brutalizing protected groups, at what point should the FBI or other organizations intervene?
I mean, that's a difficult question, isn't it? How do you run a democracy that includes people who are fundamentally anti-democratic? So really,
I just have a quick question on this.
to answer.
Are we willing to say that's about all groups? Like, for example, a Nation of Islam member just murdered a capital city
Oh
police
God,
officer.
fuck
Louis
Nation of
Farrakhan.
Islam too. Nobody here's going to stand Nation of Islam.
Oh,
Don't.
that's
They're
what I'm
also
asking.
there. Hold on. So let's talk about this, right? So there are groups in the United States that are recognized to being hate groups. What you're describing, the Nation of Islam, is currently categorized as a hate group. So this would extend to some type of overreach that you would want under this. I'm specifically saying there are hate groups in the United States who commit crimes, and they're still functioning, and some even, as we know historically with the Klan, have worked side by side with different organizations within the United States. So it's very strange to me how within this United States government, we're very sort of sympathetic towards white nationalism and white supremacist groups and are willing to work with them. But then when it's finally time to say, like, hey, we have something, in this case, a tool that we could use to really make sure that this problem no longer exists, especially considering that they still are trying to vie for political power, and then we're kind of hands off on it. I just want to know where our stance is on this, you know?
Yeah,
Right,
right. So
so-
again, then what you could see is then when Joe talked about just using it against white nationalism, and people started to voice concern and say,
You got to stop going on this white nationalist adjacent defending, man. It's really weird.
Joe, I understand that a racist like you needs to keep interfering when I'm trying to say something, but you can see that he's only focused on sort of the hatred that comes from one sort of hate group, and people's point of contention was, but that will branch out. They'll call other groups hate groups, and they'll use this. And then when pressed just a little, Joe says, yes, groups that are hate groups would be groups that we would use this technology to go after.
Yes.
I don't understand your side point about how white nationalists are accepted in our political discourse. Being associated to a white nationalist is one of the worst things you could do in politics. If you're
Sure.
a member of the Nation of Islam,
No,
you could
it's
take pictures
not.
with
What
the
the
Congressional
fuck are you
Black.
talking
You could
about?
take pictures with the Congressional Black Caucus and Barack Obama, and it's no problem whatsoever.
Right.
Yes, it
so
certainly
then
is.
let's build upon that idea then.
No,
Do you think that every Loudoun County official who is currently running for public office should condemn the white knights of the Klan?
I think that we should. No, I think that these purity tests are horseshit. I think they should.
Hold
condemn
on.
the
Let me
Klan
make
if
this
it
very
comes up
clear.
specific-
Let me make this even.
like,
I can
is this
how to
gonna
load
be
this.
like,
We got to make
the
sure we're
old-
clear
like
about
the
this,
debate
Rob.
with Trump, just like the debate with Trump, where they constantly ask him, "Do you condemn white nationalists? Do you condemn white nationalists?" Like, sure. Should every Democrat member of the Congressional
And
Black
then he-
Caucus
and
have to
then he-
constantly
and then he
stand up
said-
and condemn
So,
the Nation
can
of
I-
Islam? I guess.
And then he basically
So-
endorsed-
Yeah, that's probably
and
So
then he
fine.
can I
basically
can I
endorsed-
I gotta interject on something to be
I want
Sure.
Joe to be able to
Thank you.
respond to this, and then I'm going to go to Socrates and Kat, and then Vivian. Okay.
in Loudoun County, Virginia. The Loyal White Knights, which is a Klan adjacent organization, made pamphlets and threw them on residents' doorsteps. And it said, and I'm quoting here, oppose queer loving CRT crazy school board. Citizens work together with law enforcement. We need each other to stop the communists. Should Loudoun County public officials, Republican and Democrat alike, condemn the posting of that on residents' doorsteps?
That's
I'm
In
mad.
this
not
case,
for
I'm
these
specifically
sort of-
talking about Glenn Youngkin.
Sure.
and other officials.
I'm not for these purity tests, just like I'm not for the purity test of every Democrat or someone who defends critical race theory having to denounce Ibram Kennedy or Rob DiNangelo every time they say all white people are racist. It's stupid, this purity test. It's the KKK. No one takes them seriously. If people have problems with the school board and things in Loudoun County, that's fine. The idea that people should have to condemn them that you disagree with politically because the KKK said thing. Let me ask you this. Should the Democrats have to condemn the fact, every one of them, that Richard Spencer said he was voting Democrat and for Joe Biden? Should they all stand up and have to condemn
loyal
that?
white knights are aligned rhetorically with the rhetoric of Loudoun County Republicans in terms of condemning CRT, supporting law enforcement, and being against gender affirmation.
Your party, the Democratic Party, is aligned with Richard Spencer and plenty of other racists.
What evidence do you have to support that claim?
The Democratic Party is not aligned with Richard Spencer, you lying fuck.
So the skinheads, their rhetoric is aligned with people like AOC in criticizing Israel. So should everyone who criticizes Israel, in many cases rightfully so, should they have to get up and say, oh, but we strongly condemn the neo-Nazis and the skinheads? Louis Farrakhan said Jews were like termites 2 weeks before the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter. Should everyone who's ever attended a Louis Farrakhan rally stand up and have to condemn? Should the Democrats in the Black Congressional Caucus have to stand up and condemn Louis Farrakhan and the skinheads for that?
So in interest of time, I'm just going to interpret your answer.
Hold on, Socrates, can you handle this for us?
How many lines?
Socrates, let's give Socrates some space. He's a smart guy. Can handle this for us. But Rob, I've missed you, buddy. I've missed you so much. Go ahead, Socrates.
So, first of all, I condemn Richard Spencer. I disavow him. Rob, I'm happy to talk to you about Israel sometime. It could be interesting. I would be happy to work with neo-Nazis, white supremacists, anti-Semites. I'm Jewish. I would be happy to work with them to try to put up some kind of effective legislation that we would stop giving money to Israel for weapons. I would work with people that I don't like to make good things happen. So I'm with you on the purity testing in some cases. I'm with you in general that we shouldn't start adding tools to our way too powerful security apparatus to do something that, so I don't like white supremacists. I don't think that is going to go away. I don't see how anybody could. We used to have to get warrants from secret courts that almost never got denied in order to investigate people for things related to terrorism. And then everybody decided that's too much work. So now we don't have to get warrants. I don't like this idea that we can just not have to have any due process period to do anything because it's going after people we don't like. And when anybody can be put on that list, that's really, really bad. I actually would like to take this in a pretty different, I think, really, really critical direction, which is talking about, so I'm a scientist, I'm a data scientist, I'm a cancer researcher. I do a lot of coding and programming, data analysis. Joe Lewis, I was just analyzing that data set that she sent out. Looks like New Jersey might be racist because they arrest more black people more often than white people during those stops, significantly, like 20-point difference. But my big issue as someone who develops these kind of tools, not those kind of tools, but looking at data science, is when these become a proxy for something else. So here's the situation. So if I go into a skating rink and somebody says, oh, I think you're this person, you can't come here, you've been banned, whatever. If that's the kind of thing that gets investigated, and let's say that person keeps doing that, and all the people that they keep kicking out that they think all look the same all happen to be black, that's a thing that becomes on that person. That's relevant to that person. And we get to ask, is this racist? Was this person racist, or was this person not doing their due diligence? As soon as we put an objective metric in place to do that racism for us, it's no longer questionable. Oh, they didn't do it. It was just the algorithm. Right? So this is something that I'm really, really concerned about in our society, that we're becoming really technocratic. People want fucking like Elon Musk to be our president because he fucking tweets shit about Dogecoin, right? This is This is not the kind of thing that we should be replacing our own evaluations of things with something that ends up being just a proxy for those things, but an unquestionable proxy, because it's science.
Yeah, I'm with you with that, Socrates. And this is kind of like when certain people who are objectionable or object in dissent to critical race theory, right? One of the things they talk about is that like they need sort of definitive proof that racism or racial bias or discrimination is ordinary and ingrained in systems. And the problem is with algorithms currently, Katarana touched on it, I think you touched on it there as well, and it's been kind of like knocked at in different panels where and different panelists, I should say, excuse me, that once we start getting into this practice of where our internalized bias has the potential of ending up in the algorithms, and then these algorithms make certain conclusions based on the information that it's inputted in, it creates sort of like a self-determination, or I guess maybe there was a feedback loop of just like yielding the results that we want. And then disproportionately, as we saw with other types of recognition data, it's only going to affect Black Americans, it's going to affect persons of color, Indigenous Americans, Indigenous folks generally, more broadly in the United States. And that's something that I think should be of the utmost concern if we're looking into algorithmic implementation. And even like within the NYPD, right? If they're going to mass look for suspects and gang affiliation, like I mentioned, 42,000 members in their database, over 90% are Black and Latinx. So it's like, we're going to round up the gang members now. And it's like, okay, if we understand that this database doesn't have any type of like threshold to being added in there for a suspected gang member, you're just going to essentially have a system that's going to arrest Black and Latino folks at wholesale. And then use the algorithm to justify.
Sorry, I want to
just really quickly.
Go ahead. Sorry,
yeah. So to Joe, and also this would be a right flag to Nora. I'm sure you'll appreciate this. I don't like the idea of something that we could do with data as well, which is those like unconscious bias tests that you can take. I don't like the idea of like you go to a job, you take one of those. Oh, sorry, too much bias. Not allowed to be part of a hiring process. Not allowed to work here. That's a thing that I could imagine somebody suggesting. Maybe it'll never go into place, but that kind of trying to find an objective metric instead of doing our own evaluations of like people's actions, of actual facts on the ground, that's what I don't like. So I'll expand it way broadly.
Yeah. So like,
so
sorry.
I gotta go to no problem. You're great. Let's go to Kat. Let's go to Vivian, Lewis, and then Connor and Lauren.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to talk about the last point where there was a bunch of pushback about the idea of using these types of technologies to round up hate groups, and also how white supremacy came into the conversation. And I just wanted to say, like, one of the reasons why we have to make an emphasis on white supremacist groups having to be added to the system is, even if it's counted as a hate group, it's a bit crazy to think that white supremacist groups don't have at least an inch of power within our system. We don't have to worry about Black supremacist groups. If we end up having something that rounds up hate groups, you don't have to worry. Don't worry. They'll find the Black supremacist groups. They'll find the like Islamists and everything. But you have to actually say, no, there needs to be an emphasis to also round up white supremacist groups, because as we literally have a representative that is like homies with fucking like Nick Fuentes, okay? Like, we have people in power in this country that like are affiliated with white supremacists. So it does need to be emphasized that white supremacists.
Name the politicians that are white supremacists.
Oh,
you know what? Claim that she's making.
Gates, Tom Cotton, fucking what was his fucking name? Slimy fuck that was like advisor to the president. Fucking Steve Bannon being involved in fucking everything. Anyone who has fucking done shit with Steve Bannon, probably, right? Ted Cruz fucking cozying up to various fucking white supremacists and Nazis at CPAC, right?
There's got to be hundreds more, right? Keep going. The whole Republican Party, probably.
Right? No one made
No one made that claim.
Okay,
so why are we going down this road?
When I'm speaking right now, I never made a claim that all of the Republican Party. But you know what? We don't have a problem with anybody within that has any power being a Black supremacist or Islamist supremacist. Even if
okay, hold up. So are you saying that white supremacists should be put on an even keel with other supremacy groups, or are you saying that we should be
I think
uniquely focused on white supremacy?
No. I'm saying that they should be on a even keel with all the others. The only reason
Okay.
why there was a need to emphasize that if we're going to target hate groups, it needs to include white supremacist groups, because if we just leave it to the government to go ahead and round up hate groups, it's going to be very interestingly convenient that they forget a whole bunch of white supremacist groups, because those groups happen to hold power.
In order, as somebody who's, you know, centrist or center right or whatever, I understand the fucking thing, but y'all, like, when I say y'all, I mean like lefties and progressives, you need to fucking define shit very aggressively, okay? White supremacy cannot be fucking, you can't conflate systemic and interpersonal.
When I'm saying groups,
define it specifically.
I just want to say, when I'm saying groups, I'm not talking about, I know we ended up saying, how about Robert DiAngelo? Nope, Robert DiAngelo, that's not what the fuck I'm talking about. When I'm saying white supremacist groups, I mean recognized groups. I'm not saying just anybody that ends up going to brunch with the homies. I'm talking about people that like are part of the KKK, people that are part of Proud Boys, like actual supremacy groups. I'm not saying just anybody that happens to be like
aren't white supremacists.
To build on Connor point a little bit and give some ground to Connor, this is why the terror report was so incredibly important. And the terror report was not even a commission. It was a report that Chad Wolf did during the Trump administration. And he acknowledged within that report that specifically there's a particular type of domestic terrorism that's happening in the United States, and it involves white identity centered. And again, like I don't know how to say this in the nicest way possible, so I'll just take a quote from Chad V. Hamilton. White people in the United States have to stop being sorry about being racially identifiable. And I don't know how else to say it at that point. And those are his words, not mine.
Rob, hold on, please. Let Vivian. She's been waiting very patiently. And Joe, do you remember that thing about staying on topic? That's funny. Let's kind of mix Vivian off.
It's just fucking annoying, isn't it? Because like fucking half an hour after Rob's trotted out like 10 false statements in fucking quick succession, a mere 10 minutes after going, "Oh, you're going to accuse me of gish galloping," like it's this fucking.
Name one false statement I had. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was fucking talking, cunt. Look, this.
You sound mush-mouthed and nervous. Maybe you should focus on yourself instead of me.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm fucking annoyed because every time I got to I tried to fucking speak, I had to fucking wait for fucking forever to actually get a word out. But whatever, it's fine. And then it becomes very, very difficult to be able to like address them all, right? So Catarana managed to get in there and address one of them, which is the idea that like the KKK are completely fucking sidelined in politics and nobody hangs out with white supremacists because it's political suicide. There was also the bullshit about like Richard Spencer being aligned with the Democratic Party. Richard Spencer was not aligned with the Democratic Party. He made a post saying a short video saying he was going to vote for the Democrats this time because Trump was a fucking idiot. And then he did a live stream talking about how like Trump had basically forsaken the far right by moving the fucking embassy to Jerusalem, right? So he's not aligned on like democratic policy at all. I can't even remember the rest of them, right? Because that's the problem with gish galloping. I should probably sit here and just fucking take notes because the amount of wrong things that came out of Rob North's mouth there were just fucking...
I can add something to the Richard Spencer thing if you don't mind, because I actually watched a kind of like a clip of him talking about the Democrats. The reason he said he was voting for the Democrats, his exact words almost were, oh, sure, he'll make things better for black people, but he'll also make things better for white people, and I care about making things better for white. Like, and the reason it's maybe less practical to purity test Democrats over whether or not they would disavow Richard Spencer is because everyone knows they would all say yes. One word answer, that's it.
And
if you ask Trump if he disavows white supremacy, he will bumble and fluster. I didn't.
When Trump was asked,
that's why it's worth asking. I think it's worth asking for entertainment purposes, if anything.
When Trump was asked up on fucking stage, which was another thing that Rob North brought up, right? He got all fucking like mealy mouthed to refuse to fucking answer the question. It said he didn't know who the Proud Boys were, which is fucking bullshit considering that he he'd already had them fucking sitting with him at his inauguration, right? That they turn up to the fucking CPAC and constantly take pictures with people like Donald Trump, right? There's no fucking way that the president of the United States did not know who the fucking Proud Boys were at that time, and he didn't disavow them, did he? He said they need to stand back, stand by, because somebody needs to do something. It was a tacit fucking endorsement of violence against like leftist protesters or whatever, and the utter dishonesty to completely fucking disregard that. So Lona Box is absolutely right. It would be really fucking stupid to ask Democrats if they disavow the KKK or Richard Spencer, because they'll just go, well, yeah, obviously, duh. But if you ask a fucking Republican, they're going to have to be a lot more careful about their words, aren't they? Because they know where their fucking bread is buttered.
Well, can I just think
there's a lot that's been said.
A lot of it said about Rob, so now he's got
to
Sure, thank you. First off, Vivian, maybe you should take notes when I talk. Maybe you'll learn something and won't be so mush-mouthed and filled with profanity and nonsense statements. So go ahead and get your notepad out if you want. I could wait for my statement till we go. Second, you weren't able to say anything that I was untrue. You weren't able to say anything that I said that was inaccurate. You got to the Richard Spencer point and then admitted. You admitted. But I don't know if you know how to write, though. Like, that could be a problem. You can't just use 4-letter F words the whole time when you write like you do when you talk. Anyways, what we see is... By the way, why is that sort of sexist language? If I started calling women the C word, would that be cool on your channel? She's just curious.
She's a Brit in this country, it's fine.
Trump is univocal here.
You don't know any better.
She's British. If you don't have a British accent, don't use the C word, all right? Thank you.
I'm not calling you a woman. I'm calling you a fanny.
Okay.
They will, Vanka. Yeah, whatever.
All right, come on, go with
anyways,
it.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but so we got to the point where I asked her to disprove any of the things I said. So she talks about the Richard Spencer, admits that yes, Richard Spencer actually did vote for the Democratic Party. She says, yeah, a lot of that was because of the stance on Israel. Exactly. We see that a lot of the talking points from white nationalists on Israel are very similar to the left. And additionally, the idea that these purity tests only need to be given on the right because we know the Democrats aren't racist. The Democrats have very many racists in their ranks. I mentioned one, Louis Farrakhan, that was actually taking pictures with members of the Black Congressional Caucus that actually piled around.
Hey, Rob, what does this have to do with, cameras and surveillance?
No, this is another...
What about?
So, right. So what we see, this is a tactic that I used to see on this panel when I was on here before. People take it completely to a different topic when I address their ridiculous points. They suddenly go,
"You're the one doing the what about it."
Okay. Let him finish. Yeah, everyone adjust his point. Everyone addresses his point, so he's got to be able to get a response. Right. So it is.
So just to bring it on topic, what we are talking about is I share a belief of privacy concerns of giving these sort of tools to our government agencies and how they'll be misapplied. And when Joe was suggesting just applying it to one hate group, my question was, will we apply to all hate groups? And what we see from Vivian particularly, but other people are kind of alluding to it, is that we call everything white supremacist. Oh, Ted Cruz is a white supremacist adjacent. So anyways, you can see that they called a lot of people. And the problem is when you give these sorts of surveillance tools to governments, they're going to push it as far as they can. I forget who it was, Loner Box possibly, or someone said about our FISA abuses and that the FISA is just a rubber stamp. If we give our government another tool and say it's okay to go after hate groups, they'll start saying all these groups that they want to go after are hate groups. And it is true that there is no one that wants to publicly acknowledge that they're connected to any white supremacist group whatsoever. The only person that I could remotely think of was Representative King, who came out and said, what's the problem with the word white power, which he was summarily removed from every committee by the Republicans, who then passed a resolution condemning him. When we see Democrats of saying hate speech, we don't see that happen. Instead, they don't remove them from committees. They allow them to get away with that stuff. The point is this, if we're going to say that we're using these tools for one group, understand that they're going to be used massively by our state, and they're going to go after groups that you all will like as well. The question I have for Connor, who's actually interested in having a reasonable conversation, I think, is what do we do, though, about keeping these out of this facial recognition out of the hands of private people? I don't know how we do that. And if you read the Pegasus story from The Guardian, so for those that didn't catch it, it's one of the biggest stories probably the last 2 years, which is that we had Israel and other countries develop this surveillance technology that could actually hack your iPhone, even your microphone and things like that. And they're basically selling it to private individuals who then, the accusation is like people going after their ex-spouse and stuff like that. So what do we do? Technology exists. This technology exists. How do we keep it out? Law enforcement bad actors will eventually use
Again,
it.
like 20 lies in quick
This is
succession.
the real problem.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Viv, I'm gonna let you respond quickly. Then I'm gonna go to Connor. All right. Then I'm going to Leonard. I'm going back to Lewis.
Sure.
All right.
Like I said, 20 lies in quick fucking succession. And
Can I be at the back end of that, Prime?
We have to pick out like one or two, and then we go, oh well, that was bullshit, and then all the other ones fucking slide by. But whatever.
You don't have to. You can let them slide.
I mean, maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we shouldn't have cunts like this on the fucking panel if they're just going to be this dishonest, right? Look, here's.
Okay. Wait.
I don't care.
We need.
I don't care. You said the only fucking Republican that had like been connected to any kind of white power thing was some dude who came out and said, "What's the problem with white power?"
Katarina, are you going to jump in and say, "What's this have to do about surveillance?"
So does that mean we're completely denying Stephen Miller's connections, for example? I mean,
what's his
so easy to disprove, right? Because I can just.
What's his connection?
Friends.
What's his connection? Posting fucking neo-Nazi shit on neo-Nazi forums.
Hit up. Do you have any more points you want to make, Viv? Then.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's whatever.
All right, Connor, Lerner, Lewis.
Yeah, this is actually. I'll answer Rob's question, and then I want to ask Joe a question because I think it's actually super pertinent. So what Rob asked me was, what do we do to keep it out of private hands? I think everybody's kind of conceded that like this is just it's out there now. I think that the only thing that you can do is basically punish the negative behaviors that come with it. For instance, Perspective Philosophy was saying that the mafia state, people are blackmailing the shit out of each other in order to get political wins. That has to be punishable and investigated by the state. You were talking about how people were selling spyware that could hack your microphone. If that's used for blackmail, that needs to be aggressively punished by the state. And then when the state uses it, like I said earlier, it can't just be the FISA courts where they don't necessarily show the documents. Those documents have to be transparent. They have to be transparent to the public. One of the most frustrating things for me for the emergency risk protection orders, basically the red flag laws for guns, those things have to be public. They cannot be opaque. You can't be taking away people's rights without being able to see that stuff. So I would apply the same logic. I wanted to ask Joe Lewis an interesting question because I think it kind of brings it up philosophically. You said we need to go after white supremacy and then retire that. Now, maybe it's a meme, but I was just kind of wondering, what's the line on if you were to actually apply this rule, it would have to be like ethno-nationalism. So what would you actually do to an ethno-nationalist? So for instance, Jared Taylor, I believe is maybe not an ethno-nationalist, but he's like an ethno-separatist. At least that's what he says, right? Nick Fuentes will never come out and say that he's an ethno-nationalist, but he says a lot of stochastic statements that are pro-ethno-nationalist sentiments. So if somebody pays lip service to white supremacy, if they use stochastic language to virtue signal to white supremacy, then what do you actually want to do with them once they're like algorithmically proven to be or thought to be a part of this group, and now you identified them and you know where their whereabouts are? What do you actually want to do with these people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have a clarifying question because I'm noticing something on this panel. Should my mask be on or off when I answer this question?
I have no idea, buddy.
Okay. So and also too, just to be clear, I didn't know some people who were going to be on. So when I was talking to like my inner circle of friends about oh, who's this person? It's like, listen, if we have a conversation and it's about philosophy, like make sure that Perspective Philosophy, like make sure he gets it because he's going to talk for about 30 minutes about it and end up with like a 2-hour video about it. But I'm sure he'll hit the floor and talk about something.
It's true. That's too real.
But with that being said, that's kind of the question. That's to be 100% clear with you and honest, that's where things are really blurred. And I don't have the answer to that, right? Because on one hand, and this is why I brought up the terror assessment, right? Because on one hand, you have the United States government during the Trump administration saying, I'm going to quote here, among DVEs, which is domestic violent extremism, racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically white supremacist extremists, remain the most persistent and lethal threat to the homeland. So if the United States government believes that to be true, what tools can we use to curtail that problem? Unfortunately, within the same terror report, there's an acknowledgement that these groups, because of how, and there's like I'm extrapolate away from the study and come back in. So to extrapolate away, there's an acknowledgement that the Klan can't be the Klan anymore. They have to function in a much more overt means of operation and function, because every time they've gathered, they've had to disperse due to being directly targeted by the FBI and other organizations. However, a lot of these individuals who do these acts of violence, and the Homeland, the terror assessment reinforces this, is among these attacks, which is about, I think, like 7 or 8, it has a disproportionate amount of deaths. But those disproportionate amount of deaths are done by predominantly lone actors. So, and that ties back into the concern with facial recognition software. So, like, if I am somebody who hates the blacks, and I want to have some type of system in order to get rid of the blacks, facial recognition software might be a system that's used within the black market or otherwise to track these individuals wholesale, especially all those gang members and blacks in New York City in the mugshot system. So then it creates this sort of an issue that, again, I understand that these systems are compounding, so that there's compounding problems within it. That's one part of the problem, which is why I kind of opened where I'm at the point right now where we shouldn't use it at all unless there's a dedicated effort with other things having to change alongside with it in real time. If that makes, that's a long explanation. I tried to make sure I was very clear.
No, I actually appreciate it, and I'll be very brief. That's kind of like the question that I'm asking, because oftentimes it is people who like they basically bathe in this rhetoric and then they take a drastic action. And the people who are caustically bathing in that rhetoric, it's probably 10,000 to 1 the people who actually commit the action. And I don't know how to deal with that problem.
Okay. Well, next, so let's go on. Sorry. We gotta go to Lorna. He's been waiting like for a very long time. Go ahead, Lorna.
Yeah, just to answer the question about like I suppose regulation and private company. Like I understand, like it's very tempting for just to be like I don't really want to, because pretty much everyone here is quite skeptical about this kind of power going into big private companies or big governments. The thing about the whole thing, like I don't really like giving this power in terms of facial recognition to the state, is like as if they care whether people want them to or not. Like they're going to do it anyway. And I think the thing that's maybe worth I don't really know if I'm just devil's advocate here, but like if this is going to get used by private companies or private individuals and you can't really stop that, then I think that's kind of where there needs to be some kind of regulatory standard. Rob, at the very beginning of this conversation, you said that discrimination in facial recognition software tends to go down to almost negligible when it's the more expensive kinds. Well, yeah, that's maybe a standard that you would want the state to impose. So, for example, if like a private company or a police department or some kind of business was using like some bullshit like Amazon recognition where 40% of the false matches are people of color, then there could be some kind of standard in there to not allow them to do that. Connor points this was a bit beside the point, but you were talking about Nick Fuentes and stochastic terrorism and all that.
So, buddy,
I just thought
you're fading, you're cutting it out. Is that? Yeah.
It sounded like
this might be a video. Oh, is it better now?
It's better now. All right, go ahead.
Oh,
give it another
it's
try.
it's when Discord gets minimized. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's when I minimize Discord. That's really weird. Yeah, so I was talking about the thing with Fuentes and stochastic terrorism, because I was looking into that today, incidentally. A good way to do that is like if you look at the Brandenburg test, which is how they determine incitement to violence or incitement to any criminal activity. The requirements, you don't actually need you to literally incite action. The two requirements, there has to be both, are speech is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action, and speech is likely to incite and produce such action. So it's the direction of the speech. So the thing you could say with something like Fuentes, and I actually just looked at this today, is if you applied something that Fuentes said just after the Capitol riot, when he was basically, his kind of like line of thought was basically, if you were entered the Capitol building, you should destroy your phones and your SIM cards. They're probably going to come after you. They're going to get a hold of you. Oh, wait, is that illegal? Actually, no, you shouldn't do that. You definitely shouldn't destroy your phones and your SIM cards. So as if you were going by the Brandenburg test, that would basically be speech that was directed to inciting the action, because he's basically letting the people know it's in your interest to destroy your phone, etc., etc. It's just not in my interest to tell you that. So he kind of meets both requirements, even though he's technically not saying to do it. And I think that's, I don't know, people in Britain understand that quite well because we beat about the bush as a rule of custom. I feel like Americans are so direct. It's the cast of terrorism goes over your fucking heads. Like
we're very literal. Like the word imminent, and then also this whole like Zoomer post irony language where you can say the thing seriously, and then you can say it sarcastically, and then you can say it seriously again, and then you can say it absurdly. It's completely polluted and diluted the language. Like it is fucking awful to know what anybody thinks these days.
God.
Well, it's made any kind of like catching somebody for like incitement to violence is very, very difficult in the United States for sure. And I don't know if I would want it to be any more any easier, honestly. I mean, personally, I would very much rather like Fuentes just gets fucking whacked, frankly. Not whacked, killed, whacked with the law bat, right? But like
Zoomer language confirmed.
yeah, right. But like but I worry about like how that shit would be used. Obviously, we can't do freedom of speech. But Rob is absolutely right, with all his rambling and whataboutisms, that like any kind of law that we put in place is obviously going to be used to the fullest extent by Republicans to like stifle the freedom of speech of anybody who isn't as far right as they are, because that's pretty much all they fucking do. So we have to be super, super fucking careful. Yeah.
So I don't look at it necessarily as a Republican versus Democrat issue. I think that our establishment's been screwing over people of all political persuasions and skin colors and sexual orientations for the last 50 years. My belief is that they use these wedge issues, skin color and things like that, so that they can continue to be corrupt and cause us to fight about other things. But if we are going to look,
you support
I agree with Vivian.
Right?
So I agree with.
He's reaching out. He's reaching out. Let's let it happen. Then we go to Lewis and Socrates.
But I agree with Vivian that regardless of what side of political ledger you're on, you should. Connor mentioned this earlier. You always want to assume when you give the state power that the person you least want to have it actually gets in power and starts using it. And so that's why I'm questioning people like Joe and Vivian that are like, well, maybe we could use this to go after white supremacists.
I'm not saying that.
Okay, well, Joe said it, and then I'm questioning sort of some.
And I think Joe was joking on it, but yeah.
Again,
I know what riles up white people.
If I need anyone to clarify in this debate, it's you, Vivian. You're doing such a hell of a job. So, but you got through that sentence without any curse words, so good job. Anyways, the point is this: if we're going to literally look, though, we can see that actually the censorship is now being cheered on by the Democratic Party. We see the Democrats and what they're doing right now when they're out there, and it's not a left-right issue. Don't be twisted. Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, they don't give a shit. They're all for more censorship power from the state. The problem is because there's such an animus against Republicans and things like that right now, people that were Trump supporters, etc., that we have people on the left that you would think would be the biggest civil libertarians that would be against this sort of authoritarianism and fascism, sort of mix between corporate power and state power and censoring people and things like that. They're actually cheering it on because they're like, well, we don't like those people, so it's okay, censor them. And I'm just here to tell I know this audience doesn't like me, that's fine, but I just want to let you know, you got to be careful of that because eventually they're going to come not just for people, the politicians that you like, they're going to come from the streamers you like. You're going to start to see their channels getting kicked off more and more for spreading disinformation and things like that. And eventually they're going to come for average people, where we already see them talking about looking at text messages, SMS carriers, all of your social media and stuff like that. So you ought to be real careful when you're celebrating censorship because eventually it'll be used on you and the people that you cheer for.
Okay. All right. So let's go to...
Can I ask one clarifying question for Rob?
You're going to ask one question? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
So just to be clear, Rob, it's a twofold. So this is part one. So you're saying you're against you're against censorship, right?
In general, yes.
So 26 states introduced legislation to restrict education in public schools using CRT as their justification. Would you be against those states introducing legislation restricting teachers teaching, whether it be history or other type of race and social sciences?
That was
For
my
schools
point.
that are using state tax dollars, it's not restricting, right? If I'm paying tax dollars, we have a curriculum that we agree on that should be taught. Critical race theory and teaching that people are racist based on their skin color and shit like that that comes with critical race theory should not be something that we're funding. Similarly, should we
Yeah,
teach
but there are
phrenology in
private
schools?
too.
So should we teach in state schools? Should we teach phrenology?
There's 26 states that are currently introducing legislation, some of which have already banned it outright. And this is at the state level, Rob. So this isn't the matter of people going to school board meetings and saying that we don't want this in our curriculum, so please get rid of it. These are individuals who are catering to their state government and not going to their board and going through the proper channels. So you have governors like creating executive orders to try to limit this, attorney generals making opinions that are law binding. That feels like censorship, and you're saying that it's not?
It's not. Let me ask you this, Joe. Does the state have the right to set the curriculum that's taught in state schools?
No. It should
They
belong
don't.
to the school board.
Okay, so
It's on to the school boards and the
if
board of
each-
education
so
and collaborate.
school-
Hold on, I'm a teacher, so this answer's a lot more nuanced than you want to try to strawman me on this. It should belong to the local school district in collaboration with their school boards, superintendents, and other supervisors within their boards of education.
Okay, so if my local school and school board and collaborators with the Board of Education decide that they want to start teaching K through 12 IQ differences in racial groups, you'd be okay with that. You would say, yeah, we can't censor that. That's
Damn,
perfectly
this
fine.
isn't surveillance. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, it'd be nice if you speak
Funnily
up when
enough,
the
it
left
actually
derails
builds
it.
really well
instead
on
of
a-
No,
just
I know.
always-
I'm underailing it for everybody.
I actually think it goes really well onto what I was going to say, which is essentially I don't trust any of you, and not in particular. I don't think that you're bad people, but rather I don't trust humanity at all. I think we are shit, and overall we keep destroying ourselves in one way or another. And I think that the society we're in now is, what's it, like Giles Deleuze calls like the society of control, in which like our disciplinary structures which organized our behavior through the workplace, the school, and so on, like Foucault describes, have been turned into markets. And we see this all the time on social trends and so on, like Twitter and whatever, and we've all been regimented into certain political organized groups to fight each other in some sort of spectacle that keeps us docile enough so that we don't actually change anything, especially politically, since the right and the left in the United States are basically the same thing. There's no real point in actually managing to succeed. So the whole thing of this, the whole point of this whole thing is really we're just going to see like an explosion of like maybe cancel culture and surveillance to the point in which you start associating individuals based on like if you, let's say a streamer comes online and then they you could detect their face, for example, where you can like stop them from streaming, or if or if an individual, let's say, is associated with certain members of a group that can be blackmailed, like all we're going to see is an explosion of technologies which are modulating and control to a greater and overall degree, which build upon this greater division within our society, which benefits corporations massively. And I think Deleuze puts this really well when he says corporations see the brashest form of rivalry as a healthy form of emulation. The more we fight, the more we rip each other apart, the more we use weapons of passive-aggressive nature to damage each other, the more successful this environment is going to be.
God, I wanted that to happen for the past like what hour? I'm so glad it happened there. God damn it, thank you.
The left and the right in America, like they both kind of they're both promoters of like the sort of basic neoliberal principles, right? But like there are significant differences between the two, and also the idea that like we do have a severe problem, right, with a rising far right that does want to subvert democracy and install authoritarianism, right? And we have to be fucking vigilant against that. We can't just be like, oh well, we don't want to fight because we're just giving power to the corporations. Like there's a significant group of people who like are genuinely attempting to overthrow democracy.
I agree.
We can't just make pals with them.
So let's go.
I don't think that.
Okay.
I think that it's more like what we'll see is that the rise in far right and the rise in let's be honest. I have to debate tankies now What idiot believes in Marxist Leninism and the overthrow of a government for an authoritarian state? Like,
Oh,
You're
honey.
trying to summon Hans right now. Like he's just chilling. He's just chilling.
Yeah,
Hey,
Tanky's a
don't
fucking
ask
idiot
points to that
too,
question.
but
He's been on Twitter all day talking to these people.
Tanky's a fucking idiot too, but at least in the United Kingdom and the United States, they are about as much of a threat as fucking, I
What,
don't
like-
know,
So-
like
Yeah, but it's
Stalin,
like
you know.
EDL. It's like the EDL, man. It's like what threat are they? Like the reality is, yes, don't get me wrong. I think that the discourse in political societies become more diversive. I think that the reality is that the majority of individuals, even those that believe, you know, Donald Trump was, you know, cast from his throne, you know, and all this from like some sort of political subterfuge or like espionage or whatever, you know, which is a mass amount of the Republican Party, which is I thought was a bit strange. Don't get me wrong, but even the fact that is, you know, an ever growing, you know, conspiratorial like environment. That's something that's been growing since when? Like for how long now? Like all we're seeing is
Up and down since-
the reason this is happening is because of the implementation of tools from social media. You know, different ways of differentiating information and separating the knowledge economy into certain groups, and then using that information so that they can now attack each other in different wars, which further instantiates their identities. All we are seeing is the furthering of these identities, primarily because of tools like this being used to further those interests.
Okay, let's go to Socrates.
Right. Okay. So I'd like just a show of hands. I'm just going to say some statements, and if you agree with the statement, raise your hand. So individuals are probably going to be able to get a hold of facial recognition tools, like no matter what. That's not a thing that we can stop from occurring. People getting a hold of those tools. So I would say yes. Okay. Corporations will probably start using these tools, be able to get a hold of them, unless they're regulated not to. Okay.
This is so civil.
Yeah. Our government has a significant security apparatus and would probably love to have a hold of these tools to generally kind of oppress like all of us to some degree, to varying degrees, right? Okay. So I've heard a lot of this sentiment come up multiple times about how, well, the government's just going to get control of it. That, you know, it's just happening. So we get this, that, or the other. Like, I want to gauge how genuine that sentiment is, that we really feel like our democracy is just like over. We don't have, we the people cannot have a say over what tools our government uses in interactions with us. Is that something that people I don't mean like at a big scale, but I mean like how strongly do you genuinely feel that we cannot do that?
Sure,
I just want to hear from everybody.
I think it's just the problem with our democratic system. I think that if we had a more like referendum-based system, then perhaps we would be able to have a say. But since we just like elect a bunch of numbskulls and say, "Oh, I hope they do the good thing," most of the time they don't do the good thing.
Oh my God!
Like I think that like the United States has never been democratic, not even close. Not even, and then also like as much as I do agree with what Kat just said, I think I would probably like to caveat that like you don't want referendum because referendum is a political. It's flaccid. It has no force. I mean, like you put a referendum through and the government say no, and then
I mean, you guys are out of the EU, no? A referendum do good, huh?
Wait, here. I just want to quickly hear from everybody. Just really quickly. Just do you really feel like if like the government wants to do something, like put a policy in place and start having their officers of the law enforce something, or the military or something, that's something that's going to happen, and we the people just simply have no say over it?
I mean, we have dissent, but just not good dissent.
From Connor.
Yeah. So okay. So this is part of the reason why I identify as a Republican. This is part of the reason why I identify with constitutionalism very aggressively, is because I think that as much as not everybody here, but as much as a lot of people don't like to fucking hear this, 300 years ago, some smart motherfuckers got in a room and they're like, hey, what are the rules for every society that lasted more than a few hundred years? And how do we implement these rules in such a way that they're just modifiable enough that they can address the needs of a society as it perpetuates into the future, but also come up with some foundational rules? That way we're not doing, I don't know, fucking popular democratic vote to decide fucking policy. I would rather stick this toothpick toothbrush up my fucking dick hole than have popular democracy. Holy shit. So basically,
I mean,
so what I hold on,
you've
almost
seen,
done.
you've
Almost
seen
done.
ballots, right? Some have referendums on them.
Oh my god. Anyways, so the point is that like I think that because we're a republic, there's a certain amount of vision that was laid down that you can stray from before you have to get yanked back to that vision. But just through the sheer nature of politicians, this is exactly why the founding fathers did what they did. Is politics almost
control.
almost there. Politicians. It's like a fucking hammer. To a fucking hammer, everything looks like a nail. To a politician, everything looks like something that needs legislation. So it's just this system of growth. In the military, you call it mission creep, where as the job expands, you start to learn new things that you need. So you bring in new shit in order to expand your roles. But what you don't realize is that by the time you take a look back and take a look at what you've done, it had nothing to do with your original purpose. So that's where I think you have to be yanked back to the ideals and principles of American constitutionalism. And that's why I believe in it.
So Connor, totally agree with you. Just
very quickly. The countries that are freer than the United States.
Wait,
right?
no. This. I really want to keep us just on one thing for a moment, just to see if we can all
Good luck with that.
get some understanding about this, right? So Connor, I totally agree with you. The question really specifically that I'm asking, not is there a tendency in that direction, a very strong tendency? Is this something that is maybe at this point extremely dangerous? But do you really feel like, and this is an answer that of course could be yes, but I mean, do you really feel like it's a foregone conclusion for us to talk about the government using this stuff against us? This is just going to happen to us.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you the perfect example. Sorry, real quick, Rob, because I am leaving in a minute or two. So basically, I think the New York Police Department and major metro police departments are going to use facial recognition technology. I think they're going to overuse it and they're going to abuse citizens. I think citizens are going to turn around and sue the state for hundreds, maybe thousands of people. It will be too late, and they will already have served sentences based off of this violation of privacy. What will ultimately happen is there will be a balance where the courts might say in some states that this is a violation of the Fourth Amendment or the spirit of the Fourth Amendment, and they won't use it as much. But then there's going to be other states that basically say they make their own de facto rulings that when you're in public, you give up your right to privacy. Ergo, the state can use facial recognition technology, and then those states are going to be more authoritarian. I think that division is going to be between libertarian Republican states that are going to say you can't use it. I think Democrats are going to be more pro using it. And then basically it'll ultimately get up to the Supreme Court that will find some kind of weird centrist balance. But I think this is probably decades in the making, and I will be almost dead by the time that they actually make a decision. And also I think that tens of thousands of people will be incarcerated under facial recognition technology by the time they actually make a decision about it.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with a lot of what Connor said there. So how does this happen though? Well, it's because we allow our tribalism, and I'm not putting myself outside of this. All sides do this. We allow our tribalism and our hatred of perceived the other side to allow us to sacrifice our ideals and principles when we think it benefits us. So we saw this with conservatives back during the Iraq War and the Patriot Act. They were for, right? It was the left that you saw standing up. Vivian, can you let me get through one point? Like, geez. So you saw that it was the conservatives back then that were all for sort of the surveillance state. They were all for it. Now that's totally been flipped on its head. And like when you hear Vivian and people talk about like, we have to be careful of right-wing authoritarians creep in. We're talking about this in a week where we all knew, like most of us knew if we were honest, that we knew the government was doing this stuff. They were doing FISA abuses. They were listening in on people. They were working with social media companies to censor certain ideas. We knew that, but now they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're just Biden's out there publicly saying it. He's like, yeah, we're doing this. And they're talking about censoring phone carriers. We just had a story, like I said, this Pegasus story, where the abuses, my God, it could have got a liberal journalist in Mexico killed. If you read that story, the cartel could have used this technology to track this journalist's phone and murder him at a cafe. The phone got stolen, so they're unable to see if that malware was on his phone or not. But while all this is happening, we hear so many people on the left say, well, You know, the real danger would be right-wing authoritarianism. And it's not just me on the right and people on the right that are calling this out. You could look at journalists on the left like Matt Taibbi, Glenn Greenwald, Aaron Mattei that are talking.
Greenwald. Sorry, carry on.
Vivian, I don't think you're in a position to laugh at anyone. Like, if you, the point
Hey,
where
Aaron
you
McCaffrey.
think that you are somehow better than anyone, that you could laugh at them, is laughable in its
No,
own right.
I was
But
laughing at
you see these people from the left that are correctly,
I'm
you
fine.
see these people on journalists on the left that are correctly calling out that the left has become the intelligence apparatus, because they, and all it took, I mean, let's be real honest. When I got into politics, it was like 2004, 2005. I was sort of a Ron Paul conservative, was against these foreign regime change wars. All of my friends were left wingers. And now it only took 2 presidencies for those same people to be some of the most pro-war people I know. We can't pull out of Afghanistan. We can't pull out of Syria. We have to drop bombs on more people. The only thing Trump did any good was bombing Syria. And when we have, and this is the part that I think everyone loses, when we have propaganda that's been legalized and it's so inundating all of us, and this tribalism is trying to divide us, where we say, well, I don't care if that seems abusive as long as it's against the other side. It's incredibly effective. And that's why things like this get worse and worse, because all they have to do is play one side. Right now, they're playing the left. The Democratic Party saying we need to survey because of authoritarianism on the right. So the left goes along with it. And eventually it'll be those scary Muslims. We got to wiretap them. And you'll see a bunch of people on the right that go along with
I don't
it.
know who in this group seems
like, look, let's get into the left.
Glenn Greenwald is not on the
Like-
fucking left. He's a weird ass
like-
fucking centrist IDW idiot. But besides that, right, like as soon as Biden's national plan for countering domestic terrorism, which like installed these sort of like 4 pillars that they were going to use to fight against domestic extremism, right, that Joe was referencing earlier, as soon as that fucking came out, there was an absolute outcry from like people who were on the left who were worried about like Biden taking these things like too far, right? And when we're talking about like social media censorship and shit, right, like I think the broader people who are actually on the fucking left, right, who are actually fucking anti-authoritarian, are like, Biden is fucking overstepping the mark here, and it's a bit fucking much. We don't want state control of fucking social media companies, okay? So, like, every time you reference this broader left that apparently is somehow sheepishly acceding to these governmental overreaches, it doesn't fucking exist. The left is extremely fucking fragmented on this issue.
Oh yeah, the left is actually really fragmented. It's still fragmented.
Well, so
Can I offer in there as well?
so-
Can I answer your
mind?
question, Socrates?
yeah, please.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it concerns me with the regards of your question. I'm going to lay out just some, like, again, it's not Joe on a panel if he doesn't simp for New Jersey a little bit, so I'm going to do some Jersey simping, right? So Governor Murphy like wanted to basically like self-suck all the way to his taint when he was talking about voter turnout in New Jersey for the 2020 elections. Like, oh my God, we made it to 69%, guys. What a great job. And then fast forward just a couple months later to our gubernatorial primaries to figure out who was going to run against Governor Murphy. We couldn't even get beyond 15% voter turnout. So this is an individual, again, the governor of our state, who has more control on everybody's navigation, and we can't even get 12% of the vote to show up. Like, we got 12% of the vote, less than 1 million people in a state of over 6 million eligible voters. And my concern is broadly is that we're very politically, socially, and economically apathetic to our conditions. And every once in a while, we get certain flashpoints. And my concern about certain flashpoints is not necessarily the flat. I'm excited that Loudoun County, Virginia Republicans decided to fight critical race theory and gender affirmation in deep blue counties like Loudoun, Prince William, and Fairfax County. It's amazing for 4 counties that are deep blue in order like to fight against that. That's Republicans trying to be competitive. They're not fighting CRT because they give a shit. They're not fighting gender affirmation because they give a shit. They want those counties back, and that's the rhetoric that they're using. And they're going to prop up the Chris Rufos, the John Lindsays, and all the anti-communist rhetoric they can to get those seats. That's exciting, concerning, but exciting. But what happens after that, right? So if they lose that fight for critical race theory, if they lose that fight for gender affirmation, are Republicans in those counties going to care anymore? Or are they just going to continue just being apathetic to their conditions of like, well, we lost the fight to get our governor. In this case, they're really just fighting for Glenn Youngkin so they can just do things through executive action because they have a Democratic legislature. Like, my concern there is that Republicans do a very good job at creating outrage culture in order to justify just doing really just ridiculous things, right? They already have close to a supermajority of the state legislatures, but despite that, they're still making these fights to validate, like, we're actually the ones without the power. And it's like, if you have a supermajority of the state legislatures and the majorities of the mayors, and Democrats only have half of the legislatures, who's actually in power here? So my concern macro, right, is that we have to worry about facial recognition and all of these things, whatever the issue is now, not when they're writing the legislation on the desk, not when they're doing the public comment to extend your superintendent's contract millions of dollars, and then it's just a final like council vote. Like, you got to get worried about this stuff before it happens. And I don't want to say before it happens. Well, let me make that a bit more clear. Like, when the conversation starts, like right now, we know that facial recognition, well, has benefits, has problems. So those two things, the benefits and the problems, need to be in the public square of conversation. But what tends to happen is once it gets to that point of no return, whichever party decides to want to make that the rallying cry for an election for power, whether it be at the state level, at the gubernatorial level, or state legislature, or to the House of Representatives and Congress, then they start giving a shit. As an example, critical race theory and gender affirmations for Republicans is a losing battle. They're not going to win that battle. They'll get a couple states, but then the Supreme Court's going to fuck them in the ass like they do on all types of other shit. So,
to be fair, look, to be fair, I don't think I agree with Rob on nearly anything because he's you're a very right wing guy, and I'm not. But like, so for example, like, but I also don't agree with you very much, and I think that primarily not because I disagree with, let's say, your political stance, but mostly because I think the conversation is already gone. The conversation is well over. Like you're saying, when the conversation begins, the conversation will happen in two separate spaces that will then collide, try to assert one another's points over each other, and then go back to the hegemonic stances, and then blacken each other with political campaigns, use like that sort of mafia technique again, and then then it'll hit like some sort of like political spectacle, and then we'll go back to the, like, I mean, let's be honest, the Americans have the largest political spectacle in the world. It's the political spectacle that overspills into everyone else's political sphere. Like my country care more about your election than our own election, and it doesn't make sense. Like, the reality of the situation is that, for example, Rob, he starts calling the left, and it's the big other, this hidden enemy, which is going to undermine all of those true American values that he stands for, and it's because of this tribalism, and we're in these camps. And he's right, it is tribalism, but the hegemonic power groups that are controlling these tribes are really part and parcel of the same economic package. They have the same interests, they have the same overall goals, and they want to promote, let's say, essentially corporate interests above the interests of the average everyday individual. Now, at the end of the day, I do agree, like Vivian, you pointed out this last time, whether the Democrats or the Republicans win has a massive, impact on the global society and the well-being of general people in the society of the United States, for example, social policy being a particular port of call. But we never really question whether any of this technology will be used for the right means, what ideology is being essentially perpetuated, what are the underlying rationalities of that ideology, and why aren't we having conversations based on, let's say, our most basic fundamental values with people who we should be considering our neighbor, but instead consider our enemy.
Sure. So just to
I don't disagree with any of that, by the way.
But just to tie this together for a moment. So this question of apathy and political apathy and perspective philosophy, first time talking to you, you seem really cool. I really appreciate your analysis. But I also worry sometimes about this kind of analysis taking ourselves out of it, because I guess not all of us. I guess only like a third of us are Americans, but some of us are Americans. We live in this country. We vote here, right? And this idea of just being analytic and being apathetic about these things are happening. We can be right and we can feel good about it, or we can fight against it and try to do something about it. And so I don't like hearing this on panels, that this is just happening and this is how it's going to play out. when we're
Yeah,
still here. We're alive, aren't we?
Sorry,
Right, but
sorry,
just to be
sorry,
clear,
sorry. Thanks.
Right.
Because we got to move on to the next topic, and we got to give Connor an outro because he's going to be leaving us. But yeah,
I'm leaving too.
When did you say?
I have a replacement. Don't worry.
Okay. All right. Anyway. So. Thanks. Why don't we just let Connor, if you want to say something.
You're muted, bud.
Sorry, I was trying to be polite. So so what I wanted to say to perspective philosophy, because it's an analysis that I've kind of bumped into myself, and I agree with it.
We do have to move on to the next topic.
No, 100%. I'll just do an outro then. But what perspective philosophy? I'd love to continue this another time.
Yeah,
My name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints, center right. If you like violence or if you like politics or science fiction, come check me out. I love being on these panels. That's why I showed up. Doobie should be replacing me in a few minutes. I appreciate y'all. Have an excellent evening.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much. Doobie won't be available to replace him. That's okay. Thanks so much.
Nobody could replace him.
No one could replace him. That's true. All right, Katarana. Are you going?
Damn. Okay. I'll leave right now. Then the fuck. Okay.
Wow, Prime,
anyway,
so rude.
I know. Honestly,
I said you were going.
Okay, well, silencing black women again, whatever. It's Sansol will be replacing me on the second topic. I just want to say that I don't know what Democrats are advocating for this thing, and it's not just going to be a horseshoe of like one day it's going to be the leftists that want to get rid of conservatives, and the conservatives are going to use it to get rid of leftist groups. No, like leftists don't want this technology, so or at least any good leftist. Biden, not a fucking leftist, milk toast is shit, pretty fucking flaccid. Outside of that, I'm Katarina. I'm gonna go do movie review now because I'm at someone else's house and I don't want to be on the debate the whole time because it feels kind of rude. Thanks for having me on, and I will be replaced in a couple of seconds.
Thank you. All right. So let's move on. And looks like Sanso's here.
Are we doing closing statements on this?
No, we don't do closing statements anymore. It just takes too long. It just takes way too long. But thank you. Okay. All right. So Sansa will get here eventually.
Sansa looking fine. Not gonna lie.
Looking good. All right, great.
Got back.
That's funny. All right. So just so people in my audience, I'm gonna have like a channel update. Something's gonna happen on this channel, and I want you guys to be aware. So it'll be a channel update after Reverie. So after we're done here, we're gonna have a channel update. So stick around for that. All right, moving on. Next topic. Okay. A Texas federal judge blocked the continuance of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, also known as DACA. The ruling won't affect existing DACA recipients, but will keep new members from being added to the program. Biden has once again called Congress to act by passing an immigration bill before them. Is DACA a worthwhile immigration policy? Is it a band-aid on a gaping wound? Is this worth fighting for rather than full-scale immigration reform? Or is this a valuable lifeline that needs to stay in place for the people affected? Okay, introductions to this, and then we'll get started. Go ahead, Joe Lewis.
Oh, there's so much to this, and we're probably gonna argue about some dumb shit. I'm down to party. Very broadly, right? If I had to make a clear stance from the jump, fuck DACA, it's gotta go. However, if I just say fuck DACA, it's gotta go, all the Marxists, Leninists, and tankies are gonna end up in my DMs. So I can't just say that, right? So what the actual stance is there's an understanding that our immigration policy is flawed. DACA is not part of that immigration policy. So we can't just get rid of DACA, five-head. We have to get rid of DACA while simultaneously, I would argue, abolishing the entire immigration system that as we know it right now in 2021 and building a better system, or trying to build a quote unquote better system. Now I know better sounds like a charged word here, and I'm more than happy to elaborate a little bit later, but I think that's where we're at this point for DACA, because right now it's just going to be another thing like police reform and other policies where they're just going to keep kicking the can down the road until we just kind of ignore it.
What would you say needs? Sorry.
Sorry, Socrates.
Yeah, so I think we're probably all going to agree that there's some level of like large scale reform that's needed. But this idea that we will get rid of DACA and children who grow up in America will be deported to some other country that they've never been doesn't seem like an acceptable way of operating a country, operating anything. I don't think that it's acceptable to do that to people. So it's it's a band-aid. It's not a real system. It was a band-aid that was put on a system that wasn't really functioning. It seems like our country can support a lot more immigrants, like from an infrastructure perspective, from a jobs demand perspective. We can support more people immigrating and working and doing things. And it seems like we need to make something like that happen, and we need some paths to citizenship for people who are currently dreamers so that they don't stay in this weird temporary location. But we can't just pull the rug out from underneath them and send, in some cases, I'm sure, very young children just to some country for them to fend for themselves. That doesn't seem acceptable to me.
Thanks so much. All right. Next, Rob Noor.
Yeah, so procedurally, DACA was unconstitutional, and the way it was done, the judge was right to rule as such. You can't just have presidents decreeing. Their job is to enforce the law. They can't say, well, we won't enforce it on certain groups of people because we morally think that shouldn't be the case. Doesn't matter what you think about DACA, the judge is right in that ruling, which is why people rely too much on executive orders. We have too much executive power as it is. If you want a change like this, it should be passed through Congress, and that's the way it should be done. As to the question of DACA itself, the idea behind it, aside from the procedural nature of it, first off, this ruling does not, anyone who's qualified for DACA is not removed, to my understanding of this. It just means new applicants will not be accepted. This has to be the case. And the reason is, until we secure the border, if we have a program like DACA, we've just provided the incentive for people to send kids over to this country, thinking that, well, as long as the kid gets there, then they'll be eventually become a citizen of the United States. We can see, thanks to the rhetoric that we've seen on issues that are tangentially open borders, that we have 4 times more kids in cages today than we ever had under the Trump administration. And this, when you ask the people why they're sending kids or why they're trying to come, they admit the reason is because we heard from Biden and from Democrats that we'll be allowed to come in. This is a humanitarian crisis. We should not be providing the incentive for people to send children, particularly alone, across the border in hopes that it'll somehow lead to something. So yes, we do need to reform our immigration system. I bet that we would have huge ideas different on what that would look like, but we can't incentivize sending children across the border alone. All sorts of terrible things could happen. There's been reports from Amnesty International and other groups about coyotes, child sex trafficking for the kids that are trying to get over here alone. We need to make sure that that sort of thing's not occurring. So, and the last thing I'll say is this: remember, Trump tried to have a compromise on DACA, but he wanted border security to go with it. And what we see is, so often both sides, both the Republicans and Democrats, have wanted this problem to continue to be exacerbated. And so they just kick the can down the road and they'll say, we'll deal with border security later. All that does is incentivize more and more people coming. Republicans are happy because their corporate friends are able to get cheap labor. Democrats are happy because they like those sort of changes, demographic changes, and increased potential of voters. And so everyone's happy.
Great replacement. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Vivian. Yeah. Again, every time you laugh, you just prove your own stupidity. But you're doing great at that in this panel. So that's why neither side have done anything about it. And I'm sure Vivian would go to the kids in cages right now and laugh in their faces as well, because that's the sort of terrible person she is, with her utopian rhetoric that leads to those kids being sent here.
Just focus on. Okay, great. So, all right. Anyway, it's your turn next, Vivian. So, you don't have to fight. You don't have to fight. Rob Noor, maybe just
that's fine. What are you gonna do? Someone rolls out great replacement theory on your
dude, no, seriously, no, knock it off. Yo, knock this shit off. No, knock it off. Look, if you don't want to be here, don't be here. No, I don't like that. No, fuck that shit. I'm really pissed off right now.
What the fuck are you talking about?
No. You're like, oh, this bullshit platforming thing. No, I don't like it.
What?
Knock it off.
I'm not talking about platforming.
Okay, all right. Okay, great. Just go ahead.
I was saying I was gonna fucking laugh at it. Why wouldn't I laugh at someone bringing up the great replacement theory? Jesus fucking Christ. whatever. I yeah, obviously there need to be significant fucking changes to the immigration system in the United States. One of the biggest problems with the DACA Act is that it didn't get it didn't give a path to citizenship for those children who grew up in the United States. Obviously, we don't want to be fucking deporting children who've been here all their fucking lives. I don't see any reason to not be accepting children. I think the immigration reform that needs to be done is it's not like discouraging people from going to the United States. It's making sure that when they get there, there is an immigration system that is humane and that is quick in processing people, that doesn't put unaccompanied children without a fucking translator who don't speak English in front of a judge and asking them to like justify their presence in the fucking United States, which has happened on numerous occasions. The immigration system in the United States is like borderline fucking genocidal in some of its practices, such as like forced hysterectomies and shit we had earlier, like last year. I just don't understand, frankly, why anyone would be opposed to like keeping that band-aid in place. Beyond the sort of constitutional argument made by the judge, I don't know how accurate that is, but I don't know why anybody would be against keeping that band-aid in place until we have something better.
Letterbox.
Yeah, I agree with most of what's been said. Like DACA is not like it's a pretty weak system on its own. You think like it's what a 2-year renewable, which is just a really like kind of pointless position for people to be in. However, without anything to replace it, like a path to citizenship, then obviously even worse. Like, and the thing about DACA is actually like, because it's been around since 2012 now, it's revealed quite a lot of benefits of something approximating citizenship. Like there was a survey done on a bunch of DACA recipients, and they found that like for each of these categories, like well over 65% of them ended up, after going under DACA, they got a job with better pay that would maybe address your cheap labor issue. They opened their first bank account, they bought their first car, they pursued more education opportunities. It's almost as if being illegal and being in a kind of limbo is pretty is kind of part of what makes kind of life for immigrant communities so difficult. They have said that this isn't going to affect existing DACA recipients. My one issue with that is like in this legislation that I'm looking at now, the judge has mentioned that that issue is temporarily stayed until a further order of this court. I don't see why, if the reasoning is that DACA is unlawful, then why wouldn't the existing ones be unlawful as well? I don't know. I think citizenship paths are the best way to deal with these things. It's completely ridiculous to deport someone who came over here when they were 2 years old because their parents wanted a better life for them. And most of the issues that people seem to bring up with immigration, whether it's sex trafficking, etc., well, citizenship actually helps remedy a lot of this. It's much easier if you're being illegally sex trafficked in the US to go to the police and seek help if you're not going to get deported after it. So, I think a bit of humanity, a bit of respect for other human beings is probably a good way to go with this.
Lewis?
Yeah, so I think that most people here agree, and I agree with them, that DACA is insufficient for essentially meeting the needs of those individuals who have subscribed to the program. It essentially, the subscribed is the right word, because you just got to keep paying that 2-year subscription fee. You just got to keep re-signing up, and keep going on it. The idea of a temporary individual within a society, not a citizen, in which their property rights aren't protected, seems, to be entirely honest with you, I would argue, offensive to the philosophical underpinnings of the United States. The liberalism which the United States was built on, the philosophy of people like John Locke, and even the philosophies of the contemporary like two poles like Robert Nozick and John Rawls. It seems appalling. I think that I would go a step further and say that I don't think any individual can be illegal. I think that the idea of that someone is being treated as unlawful for simply being in the United States and not having the capacity to even be treated as a human and have the same rights and liberties as another individual seems to me wrong, and the same in any other society. That being said, I understand that obviously immigration can, change economies, but that's primarily because we look at, the economy through a capitalist lens where we see the labor as a market. So we are already competing individuals against one another. So a surplus in labor is, affecting the price of the labor in that area, which is why Britain deported a lot of our citizens to the United States back in the day in order to regulate our labor market, because we are essentially talking about the same sort of policies going on in the United States right now. And I think to kind of close on that, I would say no, actually it's totally gone. I was just going to say something, but it's fine.
Sansel, thank you for joining us. Very much appreciated.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when it comes to DACA, I think that it's kind of a shit thing to do, to deport someone or punish someone for something that they didn't choose to do. So like deporting people that came over here before they were, able to make that decision for themselves, I don't think that that's morally justifiable. So I think DACA is a good thing. I think that probably granting them like full citizenship at this point is what we ought to do, and getting rid of it is, morally repugnant. Outside of that, I think most everyone agrees that our immigration policy is kind of shit and that we need to improve it. That's basically all I have to say. Everything else is going to need to be like discussed. So
up with the panel.
So just a quick thing that I want us to nail down as a part of this, because this is definitely something that will come up and has come up in terms of if this gets repealed now, like will dreamers be deported, will children be deported, etc. Right. So DACA, current people who are in the DACA program won't be deported, or not immediately. That's another question of in 2 years when all that runs out, I don't know what'll happen. But somebody who, let's say, for example, a 1-year-old who's here now who isn't part of the DACA program, but say could be eligible for it, they would be deported if this ruling goes through. Is that accurate? I just want to clarify just the basic points of this.
Categorically, who qualify as DACA recipients are individuals who immigrated into the United States as a child and have been living in the United States for more than 5 years. So that's the statute of DACA. Currently, we have, I think it's like 640,000 around recipients, but we have 1.3 million of an eligible population. So we're only talking about what? Math is hard apparently for Black people, but I think it's like what, 25%, 24%, I think, give or take. So just as a thought, like,
so the majority of people are eligible but could be deported.
But here's the thing: they won't be deported. It's not right. It's not as if DACA's gone away and there's people waiting to take them. For example, there are millions upon millions. We don't know. It could be as high as 30-something million illegals in this country. Most of those are not dreamers, right? But they're not all being deported, right? So the question is, this specific group of people that were brought here as children, do we give them a pathway to citizenship? That's more in the spirit of what DACA was about, not in the spirit of if we either do we deport them or not. That's not really what the question of DACA was suggesting. So I just think that it's not practical to deport all of the illegal immigrants that we have in the country, and certainly the DACA people, I don't think that they would be first in line to be deported, even if we did decide to start deporting people. It's just, would they get special protections that those other illegals don't?
Sure.
Well, do you think they should?
So just quickly, so this question of feasibility, what percent of people are going to be deported, whatever. Let's say that's like 1 million people who are like eligible right now but aren't currently in the program. Obviously, not all those people are going to be deported overnight. Probably not all of them ever. Only a fraction. But can imagine that if you are one of those people, those 1 million people, maybe more, whatever that group is, of maybe young children who could be deported for, I believe, for no like additional infractions, right? So DACA won't save you if you commit like big major crimes, or you won't be eligible if you commit like murder, stuff like that, right? But you could be simply just deported just at any day of your life, in school, anything, I can imagine that for all those people, even if only a fraction of them will be deported, that living with that is probably like very awful.
Well, that was the fear, right?
I don't disagree, but like again, then it becomes a question. I'll take Joe's numbers as accurate. I have no reason to dispute them. Something around 25% of people that are eligible have signed up for this program. Many people had the opportunity to sign up and didn't. I'm not saying they deserve it or anything, but I'm saying if the fear was that intense, you think they would have signed it. And had they signed up, they would be grandfathered in despite this court case. So the idea that like, you know, I don't disagree. And like we could talk specifically, like I think Sanso asked, should the people that were brought here as children? Yeah, they should be treated differently. The problem I have is until we cannot advertise to the rest of the world, if you send your kid through any way across that border, they're a citizen, they're here. We can't advertise it. Until we secure our
that's not
borders,
the system, right?
No, Rob, Rob, if I'm hearing you
it's
correctly, you're saying that we shouldn't deport these people, but we should say that we will.
No, that no one's saying deport these people. DACA is a very specific.
But you're saying that we shouldn't deport them. But you're saying that you're saying that we shouldn't deport them. But you're saying that we shouldn't say that we won't deport them.
We should not be offering incentives such as a pathway to citizenship to encourage. That's why we have 4 times more kids in cages right now, because we're offering all of these incentives for people to send their kids over by themselves, and they're taking advantage of that system.
Just so I can understand, really quick. I just want to make sure with Rob, really quick. So, Rob, you're saying that going forward, you don't want to offer any more incentives to people, but as for the people that are already here, it would be basically it would be not very nice to deport them or to like even have that as a threat, right?
Agreed.
Okay, I just want to understand your position.
Yeah, and just to be clear on this, right? Like if DACA is a fraction of these individuals. I want to make this as incredibly clear as I can. We're talking about close to 4 million, essentially Americans living in the United States, paying taxes, they own homes, they participate in the economies. And the concern here is of those communities of individuals. If you are, for instance, looking to apply to go to college, you have no idea about your immigration status. You think you're a citizen, for all intents and purposes, you think you're a citizen, and then it comes back that you're not. And then all of a sudden you're deported. And that's been the concern that's dangling in the heads of majority Mexican Americans, because if we understand that over 80% of the DACA recipients come from Mexico, I don't think it's that far of a stretch to believe that the people who we classified as dreamers may also be from Mexico or other South American countries.
Actually, can I just say, like, I think you've raised a really good point here. Like, you know, when we talk about deporting individuals or, you know, not giving individuals, for example, the same property status as a normal, you know, American citizen, and especially if they've been there, they've paid taxes, you know, they've lived normal lives. Do they get like a tax reimbursement so that they can go and start their lives again in another country? Because they've been, you know, living under false pretenses that they're paying for a state that's not theirs.
Now, so if we're talking about DACA people, dreamers specifically?
DACA and dreamers are separate. They're separate people.
We're talking about dreamers specifically. Is that perspective?
If we talk about dreamers, we're talking about close to 4 million Americans.
Let's leave
if we're talking about
DACA, answer who he's talking about.
Right. But I want to make clear in terms of numbers, because this matters, right? Because people who are DACA recipients have protections. Dreamers broadly do not. Because again, a vast majority of dreamers are not DACA recipients.
Perspective, I'll ask you. You said a statement. You said, would we give people their taxes back because they've been living under false pretenses? Are you talking about just dreamers or all illegals?
I think any illegal who's paid taxes.
Okay, so here's the problem, right? The dreamers are a unique situation, and we could talk about them. But if I break the law to go into a country under illegal pretenses, I don't then get tax money back and saying, this was false pretenses that I was here. It's not false pretenses because I knew I broke the law when I came.
You can I load this?
You could be living under false pretenses in the first place and have not realized that you were quote unquote there illegally. You know, you are, you know, paying into a system. And look, if I accidentally send someone, let's say I even intentionally send someone, let's say, money for, you know, like to, you know, commit some sort of crime. If they accept that money and then report me to the police, do they get to keep that money as some sort of as some sort of I did a good job, I reported him to the police? At the end of the day, the money was transferred illegally, therefore the transaction is null and void, the contract is ended, and there we go.
To complicate this a bit more,
the analogy makes no sense.
The analogy actually is the problem, right? So, if we understand, you're ready for this. You're ready for this infinity straw man that you might feel like it's a straw man. The average DACA recipient arrived into the United States at 7 years and has been in the country for over 20. If you apply, I'm going to specifically talk about DACA recipients here. I'm not talking about dreamers. So DACA recipients, because this is part of the problem. If, let's say, PP on the bottom, that's perspective philosophy, is that individual, on average, he came into this country at the age of 7. He's been in this country for over 20 years. He's been working, paying taxes. Another statistic you want to understand about DACA recipients, over 90% are either in school or currently employed and participating in the economy. That's based on an aggregate average, but if over 90% of one sample size, it's reasonable to suspect that a vast majority are at least over within that 80 to 90 percentile. So let's say he applies for whatever. Let's say he just applies for another job and then he gets deported. Should he be eligible for receiving his money that he paid through taxes back to him?
No, because he received the service through those taxes that he had paid in. Now, let me be quite clear. I'm not for deporting that person. So you're asking me a hypothetical for something that I'm not even for. Right, I think particularly if you came here, please, Joe. So this is something that I notice quite often that you do, right? I'm asking perspective about what he's specifically talking about. You feel the need to come in after every single comment and clarify for everyone.
Be fair, I made a comment
not helping. So if you're clarifying for perspective, he's cool with that. Fine. Please let me finish my statement, and then you can respond if you want.
Sure.
Okay. So again, what I'm saying is, I think that those people that were brought here through no fault of their own should not be deported. That's a different question to whether they should be given full citizenship. I tend to think, yes, they should. That's actually what I think. I think that we should give every dreamer full citizenship. However, it cannot be done until we secure the border. Because the problem is, if we announce to the world, any child that comes here will get full citizenship once they get on U.S. soil, if it was through no fault of their own that they came here, then we'll see, like we see at the border right now, which is a humanitarian crisis. So what we see over and over again is people on the left, and you could hear it with perspective. This is why, perspective saying this would be true of all illegals, not just streamers. And he says no one should be illegal. When we have people on the left, and I grant you perspective's not in our country, but that are signaling these types of open border policies, that are advocating giving all of these programs to people if they just cross the border, and we're not going to make it criminal and things like that. That's how you get the crisis at the border. And it's not tenable. And we can see that mass immigration and illegal immigration actually hurts the poorest Americans most.
Very quick, I wanted to say a clarifying statement because I wanted to save you from your shit take. So just to make something incredibly clear here, right? What I laid out in terms of the perspective that I gave, the analogy or comparison to perspective philosophy, that's the reality of dreamers currently, and that's going to be the reality of DACA recipients. Furthermore, I want to make something also incredibly clear. These individuals came into this country as children and have been living in the country provably for at least 5 years. So you're not going to see something. You'd have to elaborate and feel free. Do you think it's possible for somebody, if they announced this policy for individuals, to just miraculously come forward and say, here's my proof that this individual came into the country as a child under the age of 5, came into the country as a child and has been living here for 5 years. Do you think there's going to be that many people who are able to quantify that claim?
How do you quantify the claim of how many dreamers there are?
We track them, and we have. Currently, for dreamers, there's 3.6 million.
Those are the ones that we would consider dreamers. I don't understand what your problem is.
No, but the problem is your hypothetical that you laid out made no sense, and I'm more than happy to hear you elaborate, to re-clarify that. What I'm talking about is reality. You're participating in a hypothetical. I want to kind of stay in the realms of reality here. You support citizenship for these individuals, and you lay that very clear. You can nod your head all you want, but it's not going to help if you're not listening to what I'm saying. So I'll make this much more clear. Right? What do you think should happen to the 3.6 million dreamers? And what do you think should happen to the 1.3 million eligible population of DACA recipients? And what do you think should happen to the current 600,000 recipients currently?
Okay, the recipients currently are grandfathered in. I don't have a problem with that. The dreamers.
What do you mean by grandfathered in? They're currently part of the policy. They're accepted and protected.
Correct.
What's the grandfathered in? Are you talking about the eligible population?
Holy shit, Joe. Joe, I've never heard someone use so many words and not say anything. What I mean by grandfathered in, this is going to blow your mind. Ready? That they shouldn't have their DACA protections revoked because even though a judge ruled that new people can't get these protections, they're grandfathered in.
Cool. That within that you clarified. That's fine.
Cool.
We can move on.
Okay. Now, with the rest of the dreamers, as I've already explained, it would be my preference, certainly, that we don't deport them. And I think that ultimately they should be given some sort of path to citizenship because they did not break any law. They did not do anything immoral. They were brought here not through their own volition. So okay. I thought I made that very clear. However, what I'm saying is before we do something and announce something like that, we have to make sure that we're securing our borders and that no new people get that deal because we cannot have this crisis at the border where we have all these kids in cages that used to be considered a human rights abuse when it was the last guy. But now that it's 4 times worse this time, no one seems to give a shit about it.
Can I jump in here, please? I've been kind of quiet for a while.
You missed a part of it, and we can't move on until we fill that hole.
Is it your show now, Joe?
No,
go ahead.
No, it's because you're missing a part of this. I don't want to see you get dogpiled on something that you can clarify right now. There's a 1.3 million eligible population. There's also 3.6 million dreamers. 3.6 million dreamers, 1.3 million of an eligible population. What do you think should happen for that difference of people who do not qualify for DACA?
I don't think dreamers should be sent back anyways. I think ultimately they should be given a pathway to citizenship. They should not. So the idea of DACA itself is irrelevant to me. The way that the legal process will play out is those people didn't sign up for DACA. They knew that they were eligible. They chose not to sign up. And now a judge has ruled that it was unconstitutional to pass DACA. So they're basically shit out of luck. However, what I want to have happen to them, even though they aren't eligible for DACA, is to not be deported. And once we secure the border, to have some sort of program for pathway to citizenship.
Okay. So you want there to be protections before the border is secured. Then after the border is secured, you want there to be a clear pathway to citizenship for all individuals, DACA or not. So that's the eligible population. Dreamers. Right. So, hold on. It's complicated there. So just dreamers?
Yes, not regular illegals that knew they were breaking the law and came over. That's a different group of people.
Can someone help me? Because I feel like my brain's gonna explode. Like, is there something I'm misrepresenting or not saying clearly?
Let's try. Hold on. Lewis and
Lauren. I can see if I can. So
hold on.
He's talking about. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to move things on. Lewis and Lauren.
Yeah.
I mean, like the point I was going to make was probably like more tangential, as you'd imagine, more philosophical. Like, you talk, Rob, you talk about like almost like the perverse incentive of DACA. The idea that people are coming over and being put in cages because they now have this, foreseeable possibility of, one day, fleeing the terrible nature of their existence in their current state and, becoming a glorified American citizen. Like, the reality of the situation is that the global economic position that's placed them in this scenario is no accident. Like the reason that they're in this scenario and the reason that they're fleeing into the United States en masse has less to do really with DACA than the conditions from which they've been placed in and being exploited to hell to be in. And moreover, what we're really seeing is that illegal immigration is still incredibly high, whether it's child or adult immigration, and they're facilitating roles in the United States that the United States population are unwilling to facilitate for themselves because they are so bad. Like, for example, slaughterhouse workers. You'll have slaughterhouse workers, and this will be a threat too. You're right that it is a weapon, unfortunately, against the lower income members of American society. If you're a slaughterhouse worker, for example, you don't want to be doing that job. You're put into that job because, well, there's very little available to you. Perhaps you're an ex-convict. You go into that job and you're told that if you don't facilitate your job properly, you will be replaced with illegals. That's the reality of the American system. It doesn't care about the individual. It never has. It never will. The entire labor market has been developed so that it will create a massive amount of exploitation. The issue is too much influx of a certain group of individuals who are willing to take lower wages will absolutely destroy an aspect of your economy. And so you can't allow that. So there's the immigration immigration policies. But until you really address the problem, which is how the economy functions in and of itself on a national and global scale, this problem will be irresolvable. And things like DACA and immigration policies are all band-aids.
Okay, so real quick, one, I'm glad for the admission that you admit under our current system that mass illegal immigration will destroy large sectors of our economy. Second, you admit that that's disproportionately.
The left of
cool, right. Second, you admit that it disproportionately affects poor people. That's true. Third, then you're just advocating for socialism, communism. That's what you're advocating.
Yeah, I'm a libertarian socialist.
Okay, yeah, those systems suck. We have a mixed economy right now. We have an economy that's part capitalism and part socialism. I think that a mixed economy, though I lean heavily towards more capitalism. Capitalism and the advocate of free markets have lifted 1/3 of the people in a crippling poverty in this country or in this world out of poverty since 1976.
It would take 200
It is the best
years.
system. Every time we see massive state control of economies being implemented, we see.
What do you mean by
this is irrelevant? Can I jump in now?
It out of poverty,
things like that. So I'll just say that. So I'll just say this real quick. The other thing is, we're not going to massively change our economic system. It's like I thought we were talking about practically what the solution is. We're not going to wake up tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, that's practical. Absolutely practical.
Okay. So real quick. So what you can see is that what this argument in our system is advocated for. It's basically advocating that we should import a bunch of people working really damn cheap at really hard jobs so that we could all have cheap produce, and it's fucking repugnant. The truth of the matter is that we need to stop incentivizing people coming over. We need to stop this exploitation. We need to work. Our country should work for the people of this country and making their lives better. And the countries those people come from should do the same. To the extent that policies in the United States have harmed those countries, yes, we should stop that, starting with the disbanding of our disastrous intel agencies that start these foreign regime change wars. But I know even PrimeCayes, because me and him were on a panel together where, weirdly enough, we were agreeing on this issue, the idea of these ridiculous foreign regime change wars like Afghanistan, Syria, and things like that. Where was all the left on that panel, Prime? All of a sudden they were like, oh, well, we're for these wars. I'm for stopping our deep state from destroying these countries.
I think we're off the
point. It seems like so many people... Oh, okay, well, like...
It was me.
Just making the point, we shouldn't just intentionally destroy other countries.
Great. So, Lewis, you can respond. Then we'll go to Leonard Box.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I think that saying that it's ridiculous to ask for some sort of economic change whilst talking about, let's say, legislative change when you have no power to control your government at all is quite ironic. The fact that you know, like, what is it, like, if 100% of your population wanted to endorse or a certain bill, would have about a 30% chance of actually pushing it through. So, like, talking about, like, your capacity to have economic change is probably greater. At least you're able to engage in the economy and act as a private enterprise, which is capable of, setting its own rules rather than in political enterprise where it's absolutely alienated from you, and it has been since the establishment of your constitution. So saying that economic change is impossible, I think that's ridiculous. Political change is even harder. I think that the reality of the situation is the exploitation of illegals coming into the country is something that I care about, and I'm very happy that you care about that too. At least we do agree on something. It is repugnant that they do get exploited, which is why you have people on the left in the United States trying to implement essentially laws which protect those individuals because they'll work for less. Things like minimum wage and trying to make them essentially being able to be what's the word held to these laws is essentially the goal of most people who are trying to get them citizenship and so on. But even if we go past all of that and we just look at, let's say, the fact that there are many individuals living in the United States who are paying taxes, who are only eligible for a certain percentage of that tax of those tax-funded services, and will then be left without property and without protection, cast back to a country which has never accepted them in the first place, and a country which they have no means of fending for themselves, is essentially feeding them to the dogs. It's not an act of mercy or an act of compassion. You're sending them to, essentially annihilation.
Okay, let's
go. An open border state.
Sorry. I just want to move on to Lorna. Please, Lorna.
Okay, yeah, Rob, you've made a few claims that were, I guess I don't want to say false, but just like maybe half truths. The first was about there being 4 times more kids in cages under Biden than there were under Trump. I've been looking through U.S. Customs Border Protection data. It looks like the highest number of kids in cages under Biden has been 5.1 thousand. The highest under Trump was 2,600. So Okay, twice as many, big deal. You asked for the reasons for that. You could, I mean, incentive. I don't really know where the evidence for that is. A few other suggested reasons would be there's been a series since Biden. There's been a series of back-to-back hurricanes in Honduras. There have been pandemic-related job losses all over South and Central America, and actually, that increase under Biden is missing some context because it was also because Biden reopened a surge facility, which was specifically for young people who came without parents, which is why the number of kids in cages would go up. Maybe I guess also as for the humanitarian, I mean, I don't like fucking cages, fuck those things. At least, at the very least, we know Biden is not separating kids from their parents, so love that. You made a point about cheap labor, in particular the idea that immigration hurts the poorest Americans the most. That is technically true if you want to say that. I think the research shows that the only demographic that seems to get visibly hurt by immigration is high school dropouts, and the decrease is negligible, so negligible to the point that anything that they lose in their wage is actually recovered by the fact that goods get cheaper, more gets paid into the tax system, and infrastructural improvements, et cetera, et cetera. I guess maybe if there was some more data that showed that in the future, let's say hypothetically, it's been true in the past, back when wage negotiation was literally like people outside factories screaming their bid until the lowest bidder got into the factory to work that day, then yes, immigration did much more demonstrably hurt wages then. It's an interesting thing that I often hear from Nazbols is like, oh, you, a socialist, you want to support the workers, yet you also support immigration, which hurts the workers. Well, they often quote this passage from Marx where he mentions that wage suppression with Irish immigrants. What they leave out is the very next paragraph where he says, well, whose fault is that? Immigrants do not suppress wages. The bosses suppress wages. If the wage suppression bothers you, and if the economic damages of immigration, wherever they are, bother you, unionize. I mean, that was just like you said that like 10 minutes ago, and I just checked it up now. It's pretty exhausting.
Just to quickly add that, funny enough, the example that he gave there, with unionization was exactly the example that I was given. A guy called Virgil Butler, I'm pretty sure, American animal rights activist who was a slaughterhouse worker, talked about how slaughterhouse workers weren't able to unionize because of threats of illegal immigrants coming in and replacing that job. They would be saying, like, if you unionize, we will replace you all. And it is the bosses, it's the hierarchy involved that is suppressing the workers themselves. Sorry.
Okay, so just to cover these three.
Right.
Okay, they covered like kind of the three things. So the first thing that was talked about was the kids in cages. I mean, I'm looking at a New York Times article right now from April that says there were 3 times more kids in cages in April than at Trump's high point. So it's 3 or 4 times. I've seen other articles that said it's as high as 4 times. You say
from the New York Times. I'm looking at Department of Customs here. Come on.
Okay, so the Department of Customs data. Can you link it?
Yeah, hang on.
And that data says what? That it's 2 times worse under Biden than under Trump? That's what you're claiming?
Yeah, and then there's a separate article I've got here is mentioning that you've got like hurricanes in Honduras back to back and the pandemic-related job losses, etc.
Shit.
If I can close it,
I would assume what that data is saying is that right now, that because some of the kids in cages maybe have been released into the United States, that it's 2 times more than it was at Trump's high point. Right now, at some points it was as high as 3 times. But hell, it's hardly a point worth quibbling. Great, we have 2 times more kids in cages under Biden than Trump. I don't think that's
that's not the reason.
No, what I'm saying is the onus is on you to prove that it was because of incentives, because of Biden's incentives rather than other factors. I'll give you an example.
And they're also not there because they were separated from their parents. That was like the big reason that everyone was mad, because they were like intentionally separated from their parents. Right, well, but these kids are unaccompanied minors, which is a different thing. It's not great, but yeah.
May I respond? Okay. Loner Box admitted that most, and you're saying there too. Well, these kids are coming alone. Why do you think they're coming alone? Why was it different? Why are they coming alone now?
It's a completely separate question.
No. Why don't they know?
Because
really quick. That's what I said. That's the difference here. Is I said suggestions. I like back-to-back hurricanes in Honduras and pandemic-related job losses. I didn't make a claim because there is no conclusive evidence for why that happened. So neither should you.
There was a hurricane. And I wanted to flee. Okay, if there were 2 hurricanes.
And COVID.
And COVID. Right. Oh my God, all this bad shit. 2 hurricanes and COVID and the war on drugs and all
In the
this
same
shit.
week, by the way, 2 hurricanes in the same
Holy
week.
fuck, the
Oh my
same
God.
week. Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah,
the
that's
same
pretty
week.
bad.
So yeah, it's real bad. And so parents before, when there were bad shit, maybe not that bad, they'd say, I'm going to cross the border with my child and I'm going to go across, right? That's what they did under Trump. But now with all this bad shit, they say, I'm going to send my kid themselves. I'm not going to go with them.
Hold on. I don't think that's okay. So probably a lot of these people sent their kids while Trump was still in office, right? Because it probably takes a long time to walk
Then why are
to
they in
the
cages
United
now?
States.
We don't know, Rob.
No, I know why. Because otherwise you would have children walking around in the wilderness with no shelter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Biden reopened
Like,
the
what would you
facility.
do otherwise?
That accounts for 700 at
The
least.
kids,
So
the fact there is an increase, and they've been journalists, they've gone and said, why are you coming? Why are you sending these kids across? And they've said, because the Democrats have told us that if we get across the border, it won't be criminalized, and our
Did they
kids
say
won't be allowed
like
to stay.
did they say Nancy Pelosi specifically?
No, I don't think they said her name specifically. They talked specifically about
What about
Biden
Chuck
winning the
Schumer
election.
or
And they thought that Trump. So again, they thought that Trump would be someone that would send their kids back. And would you take the risk of sending your kid alone if they would be sent back alone?
I would actually say the opposite. I would say that the reason that they sent their kids alone is because they thought that if they went with their kids, right, then they would be separated from their kids and maybe never see them again. Like 4,000 that Trump separated from their family, and they'll never see their family again because they deported their parents but not the children, and now they have no idea how to find the parents. Yeah, that's kind of fucked up, I think. I think that might be one of the reasons why people.
I don't.
Yeah, it's not moral grandstanding. It's just like the reality of the situation. I think that might be the reason why people didn't send their children or didn't come with their kids.
Right now, I don't want to hear moral grandstanding from people that have no problem with it. So what? These kids in cages.
It's not that I don't have a problem with it. It's just like there's no better option.
These kids are better.
No, you don't. You just don't understand because otherwise you have kids wandering around the desert and then they die.
So let's. Sorry, I want to go to Socrates who hasn't got a chance to speak at all, and then we'll go to Joe.
Sure. So I think maybe since we're having some disagreement about maybe some of the causes of what I think we all agree is not a good situation, we could talk maybe now about some solutions. So I think I'm at this point pretty open to different ways of addressing this issue, and there's probably some combination that could be used. So I'm curious what people think in terms of how much are different solutions necessarily have to be employed for kind of like ideological reasons, or is it just whatever's effective, right? So some things off the top of my head, right? So we can work harder to simply repel people from our southern border. That's the thing that we could pour more money into, right? That's one thing that might help keep people away. Another thing we could do, we could pour money into helping those countries that people are fleeing from be a place that fewer people need to flee from. Right, that seems like something that could potentially have some effect, right? So in terms of different ways of addressing the situation, and then of course there's a solution of, okay, our infrastructure can't handle in an effective way these people who are coming over right now. They're in cages. The situation isn't great. We need like a better humanitarian situation. We have like an Army Corps of Engineers. I refuse to believe that, whatever we think about our political system and democracy and whatever, but that we are like logistically incapable of building infrastructure that could like house people in a better way or take better care of these people, right? So these seem like 3 avenues that we could go forward with to help this situation. Are there any of these that people want to immediately rule out for some kind of reason, or is there just tactical things? Is there any of these things that seem awful?
Repelling someone from the border. Yeah, the same Jinx, like the idea of repelling someone from the border, I think is I don't think it'll be effective, to be entirely one. And then 2, I think that the idea of repelling people from the border, like the means of repelling them could end up causing a greater humanitarian crisis. You're essentially putting power in the hands of people who then may use lethal or semi lethal force, like rubber bullets or something like that. And and it just becomes a nasty scenario in the first place.
I mean, let's not forget the studies and surveys we've done of like border patrol and ICE and like the kind of views of the people who fucking work there, right? It's not a good idea. But like also this is something that I wanted to say earlier, is just like I don't think anybody here is like, oh yeah, put more kids in cages, right? As seems to be fucking suggested. It's just like we don't want kids in shitty fucking situations. Like if a parent decides that that they're willing to give up their child, right, and send them over the border alone, then shit must be pretty fucking bad, right? So I would like to see like an expansion of facilities to care for and process these people. I would like to see the ability for like parents to come with their children without so many fucking barriers to entry for those people. It's I don't understand why the answer to oh we have like an immigration crisis or whatever is to say well we'll just shut down the borders and then like what are these people going to do? They just go back to the disaster zones.
Yes, no country in the history of the world was able to operate with open borders. Name me a country.
Well, that's because the concept of a country in the first place implies like borders. I mean, like you're talking about an ideology when we talk about like statelessness and open borders. That's not like I mean, that's not really like an old concept. And I mean, you could look towards something like the European Union, but really that's just an expansion of borders. It's not.
No, but like even our modern concept of borders, like we didn't have that same thing going on back then. Like we had borders, of course, right? But like people walked across the borders all the time. What do you mean no nation in the history of the human race has ever survived, right? Like do you think that someone that like crossed over the border to France from like I don't know, Belgium back in 1700 was actually getting stopped at some sort of checkpoint and like had their papers checked? No, they just moved over. They fucking sat down. They fucking lived in France and then they fucking paid their taxes there. They didn't have the same kind of citizenship requirements as we do now.
It's kind of beside the point as well, though, because like I'm not arguing that we have complete fucking open borders, but I am saying that the process needs to be a lot easier, because I think we all agree that like the reason that people are so fucking upset with the whole kids in cages thing is one, that they're separated from their parents, two, that they're kept in awful fucking conditions, and three, that the process towards staying in the United States or being processed, right, is inhumane and in and of itself. So it's got fuck all to do with the numbers. It's got fuck all to do with wanting open borders or anything like that. It's got to do with like treating people with some fucking dignity and respect, and not going when somebody turns up at the border and goes, fuck, can you help me? My entire house just got swept away in a bloody flood, right? Like you don't just go, well, sucks to be you know?
Yeah, actually,
let's take these one by one. So first,
for a point of clarity, just because like I'm not in the United States, and I don't worry,
I'll let you go next, Rob. Go finish your point.
Just wondering, like you talk about these kids in cages. Could you just clarify on the conditions that people are being kept in? How many are being kept? Are they given economic or political reasons for keeping people in conditions that may be seen as unsuitable?
Okay, so we'll let Rob, and then we'll have Joe Lewis. Go ahead.
Is that your question? Under the Biden administration?
Just in general, just like the concept of kids in cages. I'm just asking the panel itself. Just wondering, like, what's actually going on with the kids in cages, because I don't know the conditions themselves.
So the conditions seemingly are worse under Biden because the overflow is so much worse. I'm not for wanting kids to be kept in deplorable conditions, but we could see that there are practical reasons that they were put into facilities. For example, the most liberal court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, ruled that you can no longer detain parents with children at the border. That's why they separated them during the Trump administrations, because the most liberal court in the country said that it was illegal for them to detain adults with children. So you couldn't just send the children off on their own, and you're detaining the adults. Therefore, you had to have separate facilities for the children. That's how they were separated in the first place. With the Biden administration, we can see that those facilities are at overflow. There's no evidence that these facilities have changed and been more comfortable or anything like that. The point I'm trying to make on this...
Did they offer them toothpaste here, or do you think that they argued about the toothpaste?
Holy shit. The point I'm trying to make is the very people that were vocal, such as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, that said any kids in cages were a human rights abuse, the Democratic Party that said similar things, they are surprisingly quiet now that we have more kids in cages. And what we see is now nuanced people saying, oh, but these kids in cages are different. It's different. Even though there's 3 times or 2 times more, it's different. And so we're not as upset this time as we were last time. If kids in cages are wrong and a human rights abuse, it's wrong, period. And if one administration that said it was a human rights abuse then results because of their policies or whatever else with 3 times more kids in cages, then it's a real problem. And I have difficulty taking people seriously that are basically ignoring or barely saying anything about Biden that wanted to foam at the mouth when it was half as bad under Trump. That's
maybe explain why there's a bit of a difference there.
I was going to say, can I just quickly say, like I wasn't asking about kids in cages with the Biden administration versus the Trump administration. Like, I'm not really that involved in American politics. To be entirely honest, as I said, I think all of you politicians are lizards. Like, I think all politicians are lizards. That's fair enough. I just wanted to know about kids in cages, man. I just wanted to know what conditions.
It was bad. They were getting frozen ready meals for food. They weren't getting like sanitary shit and everything. Like, so some of the facilities that Biden.
So, Joe Lewis, you gonna answer this question?
Yeah.
Or should Vivian ask this question?
It's around the number that we're currently juggling around is anywhere we know the minimum, which is currently right under 70,000 children, to answer the question directly. And that's as of 2019. The data for this is kind of delayed because basically what happens is you get information for the current year and the next year. So, for example, probably around this time, and maybe now as we speak, there's probably information for the number for 2020. As of 2021, we don't know that exact number because, like the census data and other data of self-reporting and just immigration data more broadly, it's about a year behind in terms of statistics.
I don't know that that's true, but but regardless, to me,
that's I'm reading from the.
So you're saying that the kids we see in cages right now, the numbers we see aren't the kids that are there now. These were the kids that were there a year ago.
No, Rob. The data for counting individuals in immigration centers, it's not that it's a year behind. It's that currently right now, there's a number of people in these centers. They usually don't disclose those numbers. Now in 2022, they'll release the final numbers for 2021. And then they'll be able to show the all sorts of data where it's like, okay, this month is this month is that. And then across that month, they do certain averages and stuff like that. They don't release this data generally speaking, prematurely. It's the same sort of practice that they use in the adoption system. We currently don't know how many children are in the foster care system. However, we can make general estimates based on other types of factors. That's
Loner
pretty
Box
much how.
cited some evidence. You're saying that evidence is incorrect. That evidence.
No, I'm saying that evidence is it could potentially be an estimate. It might not correctly say the actual number.
Fair. So I think we could all agree that there are more kids in cages now than there were under Trump. Regardless, to move on from that point, someone said that they weren't for. No one cares for open borders. So let's just ask a couple questions. Do you think that it should be a crime to come to the United States illegally? Yep. Raise a hand if you think it is.
Wait, sorry. It should be a crime to come illegally.
Correct.
A bit of a fucking tautology. I think there needs to be a better process for people applying for asylum or applying to immigrate to the United States, right? Like currently.
Do you think it's a crime under our current system if they don't go through that process and they come to the United States? Should that be a crime?
That's a question because that's the current statute.
I'm asking if you agree that it's the current situation. That's the way it should be. It's a real simple question.
No,
do you think it should be a crime? Can you raise your hand if you think it should be a crime? Okay, no one. So let's not hear that.
Wait. Okay. Very excited. Okay, let me see if I can rephrase your question in a way that I understand better. Which would be something like, should it be illegal or should it be a deportable offense or should it be not allowed or something to enter a country's or our country's borders like through like an unofficial way, like not through sneaking across some border, right? So like most people who end up staying and becoming whatever illegal or something, or like non-citizens who are here.
So should it be unlawful for someone to enter a country through an unauthorized port of entry?
Sure.
Port of entry? Jesus Christ! This is why I'm a teacher.
This isn't a tough question. I'm not trying. It's not a gotcha. I'm just saying we currently say these are the people that are legally allowed in our country. If you break that law in some way, do you think that we should maintain that's a crime, or Raise your hand if you think it should be a crime, or if you had your choice, it wouldn't be a crime to do so.
I think
That's
what they
all I'm
said
asking.
was unlawful, not crime, because crime is indicative of punishment, and then punishment requires jurisdiction over the individual, which then it creates a whole plethora
It'll
of
be
issues.
weird. It's like you sneak over the border, so we put you in
Cool.
prison or something.
Cool.
It doesn't really make sense. Like,
Cool. All right. So you
framework.
don't think that people that are here, quote, illegally should be punished in any way?
You
Well, no, I
agreed
don't
with
think
that
so.
statement
No,
and a
my God,
variation
no.
of that very statement.
No, I
I asked
didn't.
you questions
I
about
think
it.
what I think
You did.
You're illegal. You can't be punished by a government who's relinquished that jurisdiction over you. That's ridiculous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question: do you think we should detain people that come across the border in unauthorized ways?
Yes,
There-
probably.
there's probably some situations. I'd probably say it depends. I'd probably say there's some cases where we could just
Well, how
take
would you-
them out of the
would you
country.
Depending
Like,
on
I think
situations,
they need to
broadly,
be-
yes.
I think they need to be detained as long as it takes to process them. But I think the time it takes to process them currently,
Sure, but
is ridiculous.
Okay, so let's say that they're detained, and we find, and I'm not saying the current system, I'm saying under you all's, if you were in charge, and we could reform the system in the way you. Now we're saying we don't think it's a crime, but they come here and we detain them, and so then we look presumably for something like who they are, their reason for being here.
Mhm.
Should we accept everyone in that we detain, or are there certain people that you would not accept?
Like certain people I wouldn't accept,
Like what?
like terrorists, criminals, like people who would
Okay,
cause
but
problems to individuals.
Most of the people, it'll be very difficult to find papers proving they're a terrorist or a criminal, correct?
That's
Well,
not
yeah,
exactly
yeah.
true.
Sure.
Sorry.
We don't like under the current under the current system, what is supposed to happen is that these governments are supposed to be communicating to each other. As an example, if Viv just fucking, I was gonna say Lance Armstrong across the Atlantic Ocean, but that makes no goddamn sense. But just finds a way to swim over to Florida and then gets detained in Florida.
Never happening.
They
I'm
would
never speaking
they would
refuge
figure out,
in the
okay,
United States.
why are you here? Where, like, do you have any information to verify who you are? And then they take that information through self-reporting and other information and then go to other governments like, hey, here's this person, what's going on? And then generally speaking, what should happen is that these companies, these countries should be communicating with each other in order to figure out, okay, what's going on here? What's the validity to the statement? Your concern, which I can smell from a mile away, is that in certain countries, which I agree with you, the infrastructure of communicating from one country to another is incredibly insufficient. An example of that, of a situation where it could be exacerbated, could be in Haiti, as an example. This is why we had a situation with children and the adoption agency, international adoption, because how are you supposed to communicate with a government when there's a literal earthquake and other government unrest? It makes that process of figuring out where people live a little bit more complicated.
Yeah, I
Right,
just don't.
and it's
I
not
don't.
just-
I don't think the problem of immigrants committing crime or committing acts of terror or whatever, like their rates of crime are significantly lower than the native population. Now, I'm not saying that like this process wouldn't potentially let in some people who would commit a crime, but there's a portion of your population in general who's going to commit crime, right? I just don't think that you can. You definitely can't predict all of that, but you would
Okay,
want to bring.
Yeah, I think it's
Right. So
Yeah,
if I could be clear here,
record,
what I'm trying to do here, like first off, the countries that most of these people are coming from illegally, it's not just a matter of poor communication; it's also poor record keeping and things like that.
That's
So I'll just
part
ask.
of poor communication.
Right, sure. So I'll just ask point blank. If we can't get proof, if we don't have proof that they're a terrorist or a criminal, we let everyone in.
That's not how that works under the current statute, but
we're not asking about the current statute. Yeah. I'm asking because this is the central claim. People said we're not for open borders. So far, we get every single person here says it shouldn't be a crime to violate our immigration policy. Every single person.
Well, we've already said.
Some of you said that you would.
Real
quick. Now, some of you said that you would detain people. You said that, and I'm saying, well, once you detain them, what would you do? What people would you send back, and what people would you let in? And the only people that you've said are people we could confirm are criminals or terrorists. Everyone else you would leave in.
The problem here is, Rob,
Not-
is that the amount of nuance that would be required for this answer, we'd be here for hours. So what you're looking for, it's impossible to really get to in the terms of this conversation. We can think of a couple things that we can definitely think at the top of our head, but these aren't solutions. These are just consequences.
But if I could
compromises.
Right. So if I could get to the solution, so Socrates asked for a solution.
It's going to be
the
a
number one
compromise.
solution is if we can't agree that we should have a border, all of these solutions are irrelevant. And it's not just people
because they're not solutions.
Feel this way. These are actual people in positions of power.
Wait. Yeah. So just okay. So my three solutions. Let's see if I can remember them right. So we have kids in not good conditions who are detained at our border. Right. We all agree that this situation is occurring, exists. Okay. Things that I can think of off the top of my head, and I don't study this, but things that I could think of to improve the situation potentially, that might make a dent, that might make things better.
One by one. Let me respond real quick to him. Go ahead. Go through the first.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. So one would be to try to keep people away, to physically prevent as many people from coming in. Right. If we can prevent as many people from coming in, it stands to reason. If that's effective, then there will be fewer, children in those cages, right? That's a thing that we could do, right? So
secure borders. That's what needs to be a precursor to everything.
Wait, stop.
Sure, okay.
Wait. What do you mean by secure the borders?
Does secure the borders to you mean keep as many people out as possible, Rob? Because that was what Socrates just said, and you were like, yes, secure.
No. Can you just tell us what you mean by secure the borders?
Sure. How many more people want to ask this question? Anyone else? And then I can answer. Oh, we good? Oh, cool. Yeah, by secure the borders, I mean that we could talk about what we want with our legal immigration system and what it should be, but a precursor to all of that is ensuring that we effectively enforce our laws for the people that don't come through under the legal ways. That's what it means.
Okay.
So, people don't come in let's say we had some statute, we had the name of every single person on Earth, and we could find their identity. Maybe we can already do this. Who the fuck knows, right? But let's say we could identify every individual on Earth, and we had them on a list, just yes, no. Our capacity to prevent a person who we say on that list no from coming in. This is the most generic possible description, but right, something along those lines in that direction. That's not actually a plan, but something in that direction, right? Seems like you're pretty happy with that. Okay, so here's two others, right? So we could fund those centers or the infrastructure surrounding those structures better. If there's bad conditions, it seems like our country ought to be capable of improving conditions, right? We had Hurricane Katrina. We eventually did something about it.
I can elaborate on that point too.
You're talking about 70,000 kids, right? Like, it's not a huge expenditure for the United States to be able to look after these kids in better conditions.
It seems like it ought to be feasible that we could make it better. Maybe we can't fix it, but we should be able to make it somewhat better, right? How do you feel about that, Rob?
Look, I don't disagree with the fact that perhaps some of these facilities should be treating children better. I don't disagree with that. I don't know how much money it would require or what the scope of the problem is, but all of this is irrelevant if you don't secure the border, because you will continue to see, even if we put them up in 5-star hotels, is this good? Do you want to encourage a system where we have so many kids crossing the border by themselves?
So Rob,
I think you still need to prove that, because there's an issue. No, I haven't spoken for quite a while, but yeah, the issue is just people saying that, I think there's this big, when people talk about this from the anti-immigration side, there's always this presupposition that a government's policy on immigration is the only thing that dictates whether or not people migrate. All kinds of things can influence immigration, whether or not there's a war, like a refugee crisis. I'm actually looking at this now as well. There were also hurricanes in Guatemala and Nicaragua. The same hurricanes affected those two places as well as droughts in Honduras. So it's quite, you can't really account for those. There's no amount of clarity or enforcement in America is going to stop people from trying to come north when that kind of stuff happens. It's just not. And I mean, as far as government incentives, well, the fact that Trump closed basically all of the USCIS field offices before in a very small space of time, that massively impacts refugees, asylum seekers, and lots of other immigrants. So it's I don't agree with this whole idea that when we're saying is illegal immigration wrong. Okay, technically it is, but then if a government is closing a bunch of possible avenues for legal immigration and not accounting for the fact that there are some things that are outside of that government's control, that means like immigration is always going to have a certain level because of things that happen around the world, then you need like an approach that accounts for that as well.
But this is a mistake that people make because we couldn't solve all illegal immigration, because people will still have some incentive, particularly things like natural disasters that are out of our control. Therefore, what is the people suggesting here? Well, it shouldn't be illegal to not follow our system, and we should detain people. But the only people we'll send back are people that we could prove are criminals and terrorists. The problem is this, Lunderbucks. The problem, yes, every country is eventually going to have people that try to immigrate that are refugees and things like that. The problem is the scale is much larger when we have people in positions of power and other people that are suggesting that basically we shouldn't have a border whatsoever. And we could see that. So we could see that, like, yeah, you're right that those things can happen. But if we set a system up that said, despite the fact that you had a hurricane, you're not getting into the United States, then they wouldn't make that trip to come to the United States. The other thing that's worth mentioning here is many of these
they're becoming illegally
disasters are refuge. If they're coming legally, then it's legal. Then they wouldn't be violent. And I just want to say this real quick. If they are truly refugees, they would stop at the first country where they were safe. So if you're in
no, fuck, I'm stop. Sorry,
that's really dangerous.
Country where are you fucking kidding me? If there's if there's a war in England, then like 40 million English people have to come to fucking Scotland. Are you like, what the hell? Like, so that means like when there was a displacement of Syrians, and then like 5 million of them all end up in Lebanon. That's fucking ridiculous. Stopping in the first safe country. Holy shit!
Even the example that he said, like, do you think that, like, if there's a hurricane that hits Nicaragua or something like that, and then they go to Guatemala where there's still all these gangs and shit, do you think that that is a safe environment? Like, huh?
Also
the hurricane, because they're all very, very close together. Like, that whole area of the world is probably not very safe if you're in a refugee camp, right? So they probably are going to the nearest safe country to be in. Unless you think that the U.S. isn't as safe as like Mexico or something.
Okay, so if I may, so what we see, so let's take the situation in Syria, for example. We see people fleeing Syria because there's a war going on there that the United States is largely proctoring. Again, ironic that the same people on the left that are for the Syria war, but I digress. Anyways, so what will happen is they'll flee and they'll get to a place like Germany. Well, Germany's safe. Or they'll get to
Germany.
Look.
No. The overwhelming majority of refugees went to neighboring nations. The overwhelming majority didn't go to Europe.
7-on-1's not enough for you.
Rob, do you know the neighboring countries of Syria?
I get.
No. Do you know the neighboring countries of Syria?
Sure.
Like,
Turkey,
what are they?
Like Turkey's a neighboring country.
Sure.
Right? We have like I think you have countries in Central Asia, like I believe
Turkey, Lebanon, Iran, Israel, Jordan. To name a few.
And what we
see. Why would they be going to Germany, dog?
I was going to answer. That was exactly my point, dog. Before you interrupted me.
That's a little racist, but okay.
So what happens is,
nice mascot, buddy.
If they were really refugees, what would happen would be that they would get to a place like Turkey that was relatively safe, and they'd stop traveling. But they don't. They keep going. Then they go through Europe. They get to places like, please, Sansol, let me finish.
Well, you're saying stupid shit. Like, do you not think that there are people whose entire city has been blown the fuck that aren't refugees?
If we're all addressing him, he's got to be able to answer, or it's like there's no point. If you want to hear an answer to the questions you guys are asking him, let him answer the questions.
Cool. So what we see is they travel through all of these other countries, and if it was really just about being a refugee, they would stop when they get to a country like Germany. But instead, they're going all the way through. They go to France, they go to Calais, and they're trying to get into the United Kingdom. Why?
Yeah,
because the benefits they receive in the United Kingdom are better than the benefits.
That's actually bullshit. That's actually bullshit. I was talking to an illegal action.
So what's the camp at Calais about? What's the camp at Calais about? Why aren't they happy in France if it's better there?
No, it's more about opportunity. Actually, it's more of the fact that the UK will give greater. Well, they're economic refugees as well. Like, look, when you've been displaced because of war and you need to restart your life, you're going to need to be able to restart your life and build up some sort of economic surplus so that you can actually establish yourself in any given location, right? So, like take for example, you can, if you were to stop in Germany, right, you've got to learn German and also be like the how long it takes for them to actually become like naturalized and be able to like actually engage in the economy is longer in Germany unless they're like accepted through the immigration process. Unlike in the UK has a much greater economic, like, at least this is what I've heard from an illegal immigrant I was talking to in London. Essentially, the reason that he didn't stop was essentially like it was just a better economic opportunity. He didn't want the benefits. He was like, I could get better benefits I could go to Scandinavia. I could go to Germany. I'm not going there. I'm going to the UK because I want a job.
Yeah, absolutely proved my point. So it's more about economic migration than being a refugee. The same is true when we get to
no, a refugee needs
yes, that's exactly my point, and you just admitted it. That
no. You can be a refugee and be broke as shit and need this society.
They no longer feel safe because they're afraid that some warlord or some hurricane's going to kill them. It's that they think, oh, I would have
a hurricane.
I would have better economic opportunities if I made it to this country. You can say no. That's what you said.
Okay.
No, I said that. Look, if a warlord or a hurricane destroy your property, right? Let's say, for whatever reason, right? Scotland, Scotland, you're invading now England, and I was displaced from Newcastle, and I'm not able to gain any economic opportunity throughout all of the UK, and so I'm going to move myself through England into France, even if I'm safe in England, because I'm not going to be able to provide for me and my family. That's the whole point, like.
Let's go to Sansol. Let's go to Sansol. We have a little amount of time. We got to move things along.
Okay.
Sansol, then Warner Bikes and Socrates.
Okay, so if it was the case that there was this like overwhelming amount of refugees from Syria going into like England and stuff, then why do we see like all the neighboring countries around the country of Syria taking the overwhelming majority of the immigrants? You know, like just as much as you say, like we have an upper limit to the amount of immigrants that we can take in, right? So do those countries, and they're much, much, much smaller than the countries that like the least amount of immigrants went to, right? So like the further away that you get from Syria, the less immigrants that you'll find from that fucking war. So like Lebanon took on 1 million by itself or more. So did Jordan. So did all these countries around them. And then Turkey and Greece had a shitload of them as well, right? And they had to keep on moving past these countries because they didn't have the capability to take care of all of them in the refugee camps. So yeah, you are going to find some refugees that are in Germany. Yeah, you are going to find some refugees that are in England. Yeah, you're going to find some that are in France and Norway and Sweden, et cetera, et cetera. But do you think that it's because like, oh, they like wanted to fucking just like leave Syria? No, their houses got blown the fuck up. All right. You can look at pictures of the Syrian war right now and you can see how all of their apartment complexes and all their houses are just like these concrete shells of what they used to be. They didn't want to fucking leave their country. And most people don't intend on staying in Germany or in all these European countries long term. They needed somewhere to go. And so they went to the places where they were allowed to go.
Okay, go ahead. Loner Box.
Yeah, Rob, I appreciate it when you say things that I don't need to fact check like on the fly. So what you said about there was a point you made about whether or not they were going to Germany and then not staying and choosing to go to the UK because the welfare system, that is empirically false. The welfare system in Germany is far more generous than it is in the UK. An asylum seeker in the UK lives on £5 a day. Barely anything. That's pretty fucking low. So when it comes to if they were genuine refugees, wherever they would, and not economic migrants, they would have stayed in the nearest neighboring country. I don't know. Like this is just so like I don't know how.
Can you
the extent to which I could say this is false? I haven't.
Sure, if I could you explain to perspective philosophy why he's a liar? Then the story his friend told that they were coming for economic opportunities in the UK. You're saying that that's a lie, correct?
Why is that in any way?
You can have the economic opportunity due to it's not just availability of jobs and generosity of the welfare state.
He didn't even.
It's not just that.
Economically, it wasn't just welfare.
He said the welfare state.
State. I misspoke. What I was implying was that it benefits them economically. That's why they're going to the countries. It's not. You're no longer a refugee when you get to the first place that's safe. You want to keep going because you want to enhance your economic fortunes. Well, at that point, it's economic migration and not refugees.
Simple. What if there's nowhere for them to stay in that country?
Okay, well, it's a really good thing that contradicts everything in the UN resolutions that all of our countries helped to draft. So good. When it comes to Lebanon,
but can you? When it comes to Go ahead, show me.
Yes, the UN. Look at the UN resolution on refugees. It says you do not have. As a refugee, you have no obligation to stay in the nearest country. No obligation. There's nothing in the UN that will say you have to do that. So when it comes to say, let's just take migration or refugees from Syria. What you kind of want already happened. 1 million of them are in Lebanon, a country that's 5 million, 6 million people, about a fifth the size of Scotland, like a tiny country. Took 1 million refugees. The UK took what, like 60,000 pending asylum claims at the moment. So, like, what you're wanting actually already happens. Now, practicality. If every refugee is only a genuine refugee, if they go to the nearest neighboring country, then you've got 1 or 2 or 3 countries spreading a load of 6 million people at once, or you have what the EU should have done. The EU is very good at getting money together in a very short space of time in a time of desperate social need. They could have distributed that across different countries in Europe so that no country was burdened with like an influx of 2 or 3 million people at once, so that each country actually had a level of immigration that they could manage, because like countries can actually manage quite a bit looking at it historically. So like it's not even like, don't even need to make a humanitarian argument to that. It's just impractical.
Okay, so if I could respond, what you're talking about is the legal mechanism for which the UN should do something. So when I was talking about the situation in Syria, I was merely pointing out the fact that many people flee Syria and other places where they're refugees, and they walk through many countries in which they would be no longer refugees, but they choose to keep moving for economic opportunities. This is analogous to what we see at the southern border in the United States. So all of these South American places that you talk about, they're going to Mexico and then going from Mexico to the southern border of the United States. And so it's not as if you said like, oh, well, they all suffered from a hurricane, and so they're all going to die and starve to death. No.
I'm sorry, but would you, like, look, you're an American. No, I'm just wondering, would you feel safe? Like if you were like had to economically migrate, would you feel safe like just setting up new in Mexico?
It doesn't matter. If I was fleeing for my life, I would take the.
You said it has to be safe.
No, okay, Rob.
Again. So are you saying right now that Mexico is so bad that anyone who wants to leave Mexico, even Mexico citizens,
like in terms of like something like Syria?
I'm asking you a serious question. I'm asking you a question.
Like, yeah, I was trying to answer. I'm just saying, like, look, like, I'm not saying that like Mexico or any of the neighboring countries of somewhere that's facing a massive humanitarian crisis would necessarily be incapable of taking a certain amount of individuals. It's whether those individuals have a reason to feel unsafe. So, for example, like if I'm of a certain ethnicity and I'm passing through like a particular region, let's say I'm Kurdish and I'm passing through, let's say, Turkey, I might feel a little bit uneasy, to be entirely honest with you. There's a lot of racism there. There's a lot of political like instability there that are around these issues, and I might choose to go further. There is an ideological like essentially web that's associated with why people may choose to not settle in the first country that they come into contact with. And there can be economic reasons, there can be social reasons, there could be moving towards, essentially other family members in states that they've already migrated to. There's a plethora of reasons, and I think boiling it down to, they are just trying to milk our benefit system, or they're just trying to, gain economic opportunities and, off the back of a war that the United States actually started. Like, is essentially funded is essentially I think a joke. It really misses the global like ideological kind of framework, which is essentially moving these individuals and the reasons why these individuals may move in the first place.
Okay, sorry, we gotta move things along. So I'm gonna go to Joe, but I'd like to say I don't know why everyone is fighting Rob on this specific point about like refugees becoming economic immigrants, right? Like, one, I don't think these things are wrong, but I don't think these things necessarily have to be like mutually exclusive to each other, right? Like, refugees can be could have multiple reasons to be traveling, right? And once you accept that, then like it makes no difference, right? Like, but we want to treat these people all humanely, right? One way or other. So. Right, so I feel like it's just not a point.
Oh no, does Rob want to treat them humanely?
I feel like
it's more about.
Look, here's why I put it. Because we can see the people on this panel that are basically calling for open borders. That's why, and it's not tenable.
Okay.
You're the only person that's mentioned that this entire time. You realize that, right? You're shadow boxing.
Real quick. No. Perspective. Did you say that no people should be illegal? That we shouldn't have borders? That no one should ever be considered illegal?
So
So I have a question for Socrates. So we were talking about definitions. I wanted to make something a little bit more clear for you. So I'm going to lay out the three hypothetical, or not really, this is the reality, the three reality of definitions that currently exist under DACA. I just want to see where you're at on that. Okay. So the first question I have for you, what should happen to DACA recipients? These are any person who's in a program that has certain protections, and the qualifications are as follows. They're under the age of 31 as of June 15th, 2012, and they have come into the U.S. under the age of 16 and have continuously lived in the United States from 2007 to now.
I think there should be a path to citizenship. Maybe that would be literally just granting them citizenship.
Okay, so that's about 600,000 people.
Yeah,
And
or
now
some
the
kind
second-
of expedited. I don't, you know.
Yeah. So the second
Kind of
question here
process.
is that what do you think should happen to DACA eligible recipients? So this is any person who qualifies for DACA if they were to apply. So the first number is 64, around 600,000 individuals, and this number is 1.3 million.
So first, I just want to say, because this got brought up, my guess is that a lot of people who are eligible but didn't apply didn't want to be on a list. So that's my guess, is that they probably weren't lazy or unafraid. They probably didn't want to be on a list in case something like this happened. I think literally the same thing, path to citizenship, which could be just, a very expedited form of that citizenship process, something like that, or maybe literally just grant it. I'm not convinced there's a problem with that. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then the final number is, what do you think should happen to dreamers? Dreamers are defined as undocumented persons who are brought into the United States as a child. Any child is any person under the age of 18. This encompasses around 3.6 million.
Yeah, I would like to say my answer and then a statement, which is that I think literally the same thing. This is like maybe a little bit more to Rob, but this is just a statement in general. I think we have some really just generally fucked up things in our world, in our society. I think it's, from what I've heard, it's pretty harsh. Getting anybody into our borders, especially from the South. I think that's something that keeps a lot of people away, is it's like physically difficult to do that. In addition to all the walls, there's just a lot of natural barriers. It's very harsh. We've had previous societies, so very ancient societies, in which there are some weird situations where it's like, oh, you could be enslaved, but if you escape to the city hall, the city square, you become free. I think it's really weird and fucked up that we would have a society in which, if you manage to get a baby into a location, that baby gets to have a not fucked over life. I'm not actually upset about that situation, or I'm not more upset than that situation not occurring. I think it's a weird fucked up situation, but I accept that more so than anything else that I've heard.
Gotcha.
Everyone agree with that?
Well, I was just initially talking to Socrates about this. It wasn't kind of an open thing, but I'll bring it back to you, Rob, because
cool.
I'll bring it back to you because I asked you this question directly and you weren't able to kind of answer it. So earlier I was a little bit vague and unclear about the current situation. So I ask you these questions in the same way that I asked Socrates. So what do you think should happen? What do you think should happen to DACA recipients? These are individuals who are under a certain program. They were under the age of 31 as of June 15th, 2012, and came into the United States under the age of 16, and have been continuously living in the United States from 2007 to now. What should happen to that group of people? Currently, that's around 600,000 Americans or individuals.
My answer, you could go back on the VOD on PrimeCayes channel, and you can see my answer to when you asked me this question over and over at the beginning of this topic.
Sure. What would you do with DACA eligible recipients? These are persons who qualify for DACA if they were to apply. That would be around 1.3 million individuals.
My answer is that I already answered this the first 3 times you asked, and you could go back on PrimeCayes VOD and see the answer. Everyone having fun on the panel? Joe re-asking the questions? We having a good time?
Why can't you just
I already answered all of this.
No, but
he hates me because he hates black people. So dreamers are undocumented persons who was brought into the United States as a child. Then a child in this case is any person under the age of 18. What should happen to dreamers in your opinion?
My answer is
this would be These will be
right.
3.6 million
Hold on.
individuals.
Please. My answer is that when you asked me this the first 3 times, I already answered
Sorry.
this. So you could go back in the VOD, you worthless
Joe.
racist. Do you want to change this to Chris
Joe, help me,
Rufo
Joe,
or
help me
James
out. Hold on,
Lindsay or
Joe, help
something?
me out. Didn't he?
Sure.
I remember him actually answering this, right? Like we went over this.
I don't remember the answers.
No, the problem here, the discrepancy that I was talking about, and Socrates knocked on the door, is that there's a group of individuals who are dreamers who are not DACA eligible. So while the 1.3 million who are DACA eligible exist in dreamers, there's around now 2 million individuals who would just be dreamers who wouldn't have protections under DACA. So if you do something, so that was the reason why I was kind of frustrated, because that 2 million group wasn't necessarily being addressed. So I'll ask it here. So maybe he said it earlier. You can just clarify, because I don't think anybody really got an answer that was satisfactory. What do you think should happen to that 2 million group of individuals who are dreamers but are not DACA eligible? And that would be around 2 million individuals.
Okay, Mr. Racist Joe, let me answer. It's not that I don't like you because of your skin color. I don't like you because you're a blowhard that tries to control the conversation. And I've never heard a bigger windbag that uses
That's not an answer to my question, Rob. We're on a clock.
The answer to your question, as I previously answered, was this. You were very specific and kept asking me this over and over, to which I said that I would be for. They're not eligible for DACA right now because they waited too long. However, I don't want to see those people deported. And once we secure the border, we should offer them a path to citizenship. I said this at least 3 times. 3 times I said
believe
that.
he did.
And you're such a blowhard that you're not listening. And you keep trying to control the conversation because you have nothing to add.
Got it. But like he did say something similar to this before, right? So like beyond that, what's your point, Joe?
So the concern here is that there are individuals who are dreamers who will never qualify for DACA, because the qualifications for DACA are as follows. It's a person who was under the age of 31 as of June 15th, 2012. They've also came into the United States under the age of 16 and have continuously lived in the United States from 2007 to now. So that group that doesn't qualify for DACA, who is also a dreamer, is an important part of this conversation that tends to never get addressed because we focus on DACA. If we understand that DACA only qualifies a fraction of the dreamers, we can't just only talk about DACA recipients exclusively. We have to talk about dreamers more broadly. What happens is most people who don't care about that 2 million tend to do things like say, well, just send them back or just deport them or something like that. But no, dreamers are still individuals who are under the age of 18 that came into the United States as a child.
Okay.
Great point. You already made 5 times, Joe.
Great.
Good work.